It is quick. It is quick. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to episode 58. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
We were just talking before we started. You're the beneficiary of a lot of new things. Show them the new cam, Josh. Got the new cam on the guest cam. Look at that. New move. New computer. Hopefully we don't have any lag, and we've had some problems here in the past. So like you just said, if it goes bad today, it's all your fault. So
I'll take the blame for you. It's a good cause. I'll be the one that did the bad deal.
But it's glad to have you. Glad to finally. Well, we've met before.
Yes.
Many times, probably just not paying attention.
Right. Different environment.
He was drinking a lot. He doesn't remember me. I remembered him, but no, I'm kidding. But
remembered at the beginning.
We have another Army guy, which is always great. We've been on an Army roll. So if you haven't seen from the previews, Mike's a former Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army.
Mm-hmm.
We're allowed to say former. And Ohio Guardsman. A lot of stuff going on. Mike's done a lot of stuff in his career, so it's going to be a fun stuff. But I was trying to find a quote to start it off for you. You have 7 different branches. I'm just kidding, 5 at least. I think 4 or 5.
Close,
yeah.
4.
No, and so we're gonna go with the logistician quote. So it says, "My logisticians are a humorous lot. They know if my campaign fails, they're the first ones that I will slay." Alexander the Great.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Yes.
And logistics was my last branch, and I think the most rewarding branch I was in. It is actually responsible for this sweet hairline that I have.
Yeah.
Because you do this when they go, "What is it they want?" And then you rub this part going, "There's no way I'm going to be able to do that." So,
but somehow we find a way.
We find a way.
It's a tough job, yeah. Because most of the times, like if you just thought about this, maybe a day earlier,
I could have helped you.
2 hours earlier, I could help you. But yeah, we'll your urgency will be my priority now, so it's good. So, but an interesting Army Brat too. So this is, I hope we could talk about that. We'll start off with that. So we've had a couple Army Brats on, but you're I think our second guest with both dual military Army parents.
They did meet in the military. They were both in at the same time. Now, my mom, after a couple of assignments, she got out when I started to come into the picture, and my dad went over to Vietnam. But they did. They were both in the Army, met at Fort Leonard Wood, delightful place, and then ended up getting married here in Marion, Ohio. My dad's from Suffolk, Virginia, in southeastern Virginia, and my mom is from Columbus area. And so they came back here to get married, and then did a couple of assignments. And my mom was a nurse. And so then she worked at Doctors West while my dad was in Vietnam.
And Dad was an infantry officer?
He was, yeah.
Where did he serve at?
Well, when I came in the picture, he was at Syracuse for his advanced degree. And then we went out to DC to do some obligatory time there. Leavenworth for school, Fort Bragg.
Yeah, school. I just make sure that was school, not Leavenworth.
Not the prison. No, that was the second time. Then did time at Fort Bragg, then back to DC. And then the best part about being a brat was the ability to live overseas. So I spent 4 years as a teenager in Germany. It was magnificent. And granted, we had some pretty good assignments, 2 years in Berlin, 2 years in Heidelberg. So some experiences may vary for others, but ours was a great one. And so he was a battalion commander up in Berlin when there was still a wall, which was a very exciting time to be there. And I was surprised at the amount of freedom that I had as a 13, 14-year-old kid there. But as I got older, I realized how far could I go? They just realized I wasn't going to get outside the wall. So we were able to do some fun things there, came back to Pennsylvania, back to Germany. And then he ended up after a stint at Fort Dix as a brigade commander, finished up at Carlisle as the garrison commander. And that was his retirement gig. Then he retired and worked for the state of Pennsylvania for a while.
So interesting picture you sent. That was your dad pinning on your airborne wings.
Yep.
What was great about that picture, if you're looking at your dad, looked not sweaty. You looked completely drenched still, which is kind of understandable. What was that like with your dad being able to take part? And
as you can imagine, it was an amazing experience, especially since I didn't know they were going to come down. The funny part about that picture is, of course, he's not sweating. He jumped out of the plane, landed with his dynamic and fluid PLF, and then a Jeep came up, or Humvee came up, picked him and his stuff up, and drove him back into the assembly area. I roll my stuff up and have to schlep. So he was a little fresher than I at the time.
So he actually did their 5th jump with you then?
He did my 4th and 5th.
Okay, cool.
So we were sitting in the rain in the shed waiting for a jump. And you know how it is when you're at school, they scream your number. And you're like, oh, I just want to be incognito. Bring me to the back, ask me how special I thought I was. There's no good answer for that. So I just prepared to beat my boots. Then they threw me out in the rain, and there's my mom and dad. They had driven down from Fort Dix so my dad could jump with me. And it was an amazing experience just to spend the time together like that. Very rarely do people get to do something like that together. I mean, in that setting.
Right.
The best part is he was jump master qualified. So they gave him, hey, you know what to do. When the light turns green, fall out. Me as a student of the illustrious airborne school was waiting for the big production, the foot back, the hand smack. And they'd yell at me, when he goes, you go. Sure. Yeah. And then he fell out and I stood there. And that jump master came back and grabbed me and threw me out of that plane. So that's that chalk there. We had one guy here and the rest of the 9 of us way back here because I couldn't figure out what happened when he just fell out of the plane.
So what you ever talked to your dad about that experience? I mean, he must have enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the few, much like many of his generation, there wasn't a lot of talk about his time in service and things that he had experienced. And so for us to get the opportunity to share that experience together, and my mom was able to be there and watch because she spent time, drug us out to the drop zones at Fort Bragg all the time. And I know Fort Bragg's something else now, but back then it was Fort Bragg.
We'll always call Fort Bragg.
Right. And so it was a great experience for her and for he and I to share that. For him to be able to pin my wings on was quite an overwhelming event. And we almost didn't get to graduate because, as it happens, my last jumps, I graduated on August 3rd of 90, which, if you recall, is when Saddam got squirrely. So we lost all our planes but one, and they just started churning us through. And we didn't think we were going to get to graduate, but they shoved us on the plane back to back, got us done, took us over to the side, and was able to get pinned and graduate. And they did eventually get our whole class through, but
nice.
It was a series of interesting events then.
Yeah, it's always neat because my dad actually was my first salute, which is always something you never forget. It's kind of
right.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. He'd already retired, so it was funny to see him put his uniform back on about a year later, but it's always neat. I mean, the airborne wings thing wasn't happening because my dad's a dirty, nasty leg, which is why it goes into it. And I mean, it's just, because I always ask people, who was your hero growing up? My dad would have been if he was airborne qualified, but since he wasn't, I had to look at now.
Tough crowd.
No, but the airborne thing is always fun. That's a neat thing because I had one of my former commanders pinned on my airborne wings, which was cool. A lot of fun. But yeah, that was a neat experience. I kind of figured you guys looked alike and had the same name on your name tag, so I kind of went out with it being your dad.
Context clues, very good.
It was a good guess. Good guess on my part. So we did jump ahead, but you growing up, was there any pressure from the parents to join the military, or did you? Where'd you get the bug?
There wasn't any pressure, and I think I got the bug just because I thought that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, again, experiences may vary, but for me as a dependent growing up in a military family, almost everything was a positive experience. I didn't mind moving. You had an opportunity to meet new people, run into old friends because it's a big, small community. So I never minded the moving till the last one. And then there really was no pressure from either, especially not my dad, to join. Now, to be fair, I probably wasn't looking like I was developing into the military type back then. So I was more of a video game, wanting to sit around and be lazy kind of guy. So, but as time progressed, I got interested in more different things. And I thought that's just what you did. And I'd always liked what we were able to do as a family. And I wanted to be able to do that myself and with my family, take them all over the world, do new things. And for the slacker part of me, somebody's going to tell you this is your job and just go do this. Oh, you're done with this for a couple of years, now go do this. That appealed to me. You wouldn't get stuck and stagnant.
Right. So you moved around a lot. How many different places? I think we counted.
Yeah, I think there were 9 or 10 moves, and a couple of them were doubles. Like we lived in Northern Virginia a couple times. But yeah, 9 or 10 before I moved out to college, which would have made 11.
So all those moves, 9, 10 moves, what was your favorite place that you lived?
Heidelberg, Germany.
Heidelberg is pretty.
It was amazing. And the age and the people. One of the things I loved about being in the military community or the military family community is, and I don't mean this in an aggressive way, but all of us were one group. We were all the American kids. Some of us played sports, some of us didn't, some of us hung out back and smoked, some of us did this, but we were still all the American kids, and we had a good community and good relationships with the local nationals. So we just had an amazing time there. It's a beautiful city, got to do some amazing things. But then that was the bad move when we had to leave there a year early to move to lovely Fort Dix, New Jersey for my senior year of high school.
Yeah, because I was going to ask that question was worse. So you took that. Yeah, because Dix that's not the greatest place. I mean,
No. And again, I met some great people there too, people I still talk to, but to go from being in Europe where I could jump on a train and be in France to the middle of the Pine Barrens where we go hide in the woods to drink beers, wasn't the best.
So a lot of moving, you moved. I think people, I'm used. I understand it because I grew up as an Army brat too. But the moving around, like, how was that? Like, how did you deal with the form relationships or not form relationships? Was that? Did you keep yourself a little guarded, like knowing that you were leaving? Because for personally, I did. I always thought like, oh God, Dad can come home and say we're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
How did you navigate that when you were young? Just kind of didn't matter to you. Just went with it.
I won't say it didn't matter, but I think I just really went with it. I think the only time I felt like I was walling myself off or didn't really want to engage with the people that I was going to school with and living with was that last move for my last year of school. And fortunately, I had friends on post that I knew from before. So we kind of could hang out together and deal with our experiences as seniors at beautiful Pemberton, New Jersey. But that was really the only time I felt that I kind of was guarded.
So you finish up your senior year at beautiful Fort Dix and you head out to go to school at Bowling Green University. What made you choose to go to BG?
The shining brown and orange beacon of intellectual awesomeness in Northwest Ohio. I picked it out of a brochure, actually. I said, I need to get as far away from New Jersey as I can. We were state residents of Ohio, though, so I wanted to at least try and provide some sort of break to my parents for college because I was not immediately picked up for scholarship or anything. And we had family in the Toledo area, and I said, hey, this one looks good. And I don't know if I'm the only one, but did everyone else's parents take them on college visits? Because I don't remember doing that when we were younger.
No.
It was a piece of cardboard folder. And I said, I guess that looks like a good place.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, we definitely were doing like 27 college visits over a 3-year period. And, no. It was like, I think I picked school by a brochure. Yeah. Because there was no internet.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, this place looks cool. Maybe we should have went on a bit. But I mean... No, it was a different. Yeah, we weren't doing that. Yeah, I don't. I think our generation, they weren't really. I mean, maybe we just weren't smart enough to be going to multiple schools, or maybe our parents just didn't care about us as much, Mike.
It was a different time.
They didn't want to make sure that we went to the right place.
They were trying to instill into us, make your choices, not what I want you to do. Make your choices.
Yeah, I don't think I went on any college visits.
I did not. I went to Princeton for an interview, but that was like not a college visit because there was no way I was going to Princeton.
How'd you get the interview then? I mean,
I was an Air Force scholarship interview, and they said, no, thank you.
Halfway through, they're like, you can pack up and leave now.
Yeah, try the Army. You might have better luck.
You were not the first person we've heard say that on a podcast, which is funny. But so you had the BG. What'd you major in?
Eventually, I majored in interpersonal and public communications, which is talking. And essentially, it was what I had enough credits to finally get a degree because I had to get out of there because of ROTC. I started in business, but when you take the math class and you flunk it, then you take it again and only scrape by and get the D, you probably realize you shouldn't be doing math classes. So I jumped over to a more communication related major and managed to cobble enough credits together to get out of there. Because my plan was always just to go to the Army. It didn't matter. Just get the degree and go.
Yeah, because in our time, I don't know if it is the same way now, because it was like that when you were getting your commission. It was, there were like what we consider the overachievers, or they're probably the smart people, but that were actually getting a degree that you could probably use later on. But a lot of it was to get a degree in something that you liked and get a degree, and then you were going to go get your commission and then move on.
So then go to a different school and learn what you were really going to do.
Yeah, but yeah, there was a lot of people that I guess they did do it right. They were like, yeah, I'll be an engineer, and then go to the military, and I have an engineering degree. But yeah, that's interesting though. So 2-year scholarship,
and that's actually when I think we had the first conversation, my dad and I, about me joining. I mean, he always knew I was going to try and do ROTC, and I think it was sure. And then when they called, and it was a 2.5 year, they kind of had some extra money. You know how government works. Hey, if we don't spend this, so they had a little extra money, offered me this extra half a year of scholarship, but you must sign right now. So I called home, excited, of course, And I was surprised because he didn't try to discourage me, but his words to me were, son, if you think you're joining the Army I joined, you're wrong. I want you to do what you want to do and be happy doing it, but don't join because of me, because it's not the same Army. And I was assigned, of course, but I thought that was always an interesting comment that he made because he didn't elaborate on which ways it wasn't the same. So was he disgusted with the current way the military was, or is it much better? Or I don't know. But I just remember those were his words on the phone, the cord phone with the dial that we had to use back then.
So have you ever had that conversation with him now? I mean, do you understand what he meant by that comment?
No, not really. And he wasn't always a big talker about any, it's kind of like the camera was on, but we didn't record a lot of things. So it just kind of went by the wayside. He unfortunately passed. And in fact, I'm happy you let me come in today because today would be his 84th birthday. And so I'm happy to be here and drinking some internal toast to pop. But no, we didn't really have any in-depth conversations about stuff like that too often.
Yeah. So what was his commissioning source?
He was OCS.
Okay.
So I think the rumor goes that he saw his number was going to come up and he said, let me get ahead of this, and enlisted and then went to OCS. So if you go down to OCS down in Benning or whatever they're calling it now, Moore, he's got a little picture in that tiny shack where they're all stacked up and his face is down in there because he made it to the rank of colonel.
Which is awesome. I saw that. Sorry, but happy birthday. And we'll definitely have a shot for him later.
Yep.
On camera, off camera. That's awesome. So happy birthday.
Thanks.
And having there. Yeah, my mom passed away this month, or been her birthday actually this month. So a few days ago, but that's awesome. But you didn't understand you did 20 years. You grew up around it for good, 18 years. Was it the same Army from your perspective?
No, I've seen the evolution of, again, I was in the National Guard the whole time. Yep. My intent, things happen. I ended up where I ended up. Was M-Day for 10 years, traditional Guard member for 10 years, up through Battery Command, and then went AGR. And to see the evolution of the National Guard over that time period, after September 11, I started in 93. And there were even things then that started the transformation. I think my first annual training period, I would definitely say fell into that good old National Guard training period. People had the coolers, but I think that was the only one because soon after we started fielding new equipment, and then the world changed and we started deploying. And there was a stretch, I deployed in 04, 05, and then we were back on the hook for 08. And then we were back on the hook for 11, 12, and back on the hook for 14. And that's the reserve component. And I can only speak to my group, but I was in the 37th Infantry Brigade, the 371st Sustainment Brigade. They were on the same cycle. And we're talking people that are trying to manage their families and their careers outside the military on a cycle that's very rapid. Yeah. And even though there's more years, somebody say, well, that's 3 years. But we start going to schools and extra training and extra everything else a year and a half out. So it gets pretty difficult for these folks to juggle all three things. And that's the biggest evolution I've seen. We've got we get new equipment. We've been deployed. We're a very skilled force.
Yeah, it's definitely. It's always interesting. I think we always say it's different or hard. I mean, I don't know. We always say everything's harder or different than it was before. I think there's always a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. And the National Guard Reserve. It's like I came in 94, so it's always crazy to see how different it was, after 9/11, and then just hear stories now about how many people have been, how many times or how long, Ohio National Guardsmen or Mississippi National Guardsmen had deployed overseas. It's crazy. Yeah.
It really is an amazing thing to see the evolution of that force.
Yeah, I'd like to see the thing is crazy is all the time with active time. It would be interesting to somehow, in my mind, we talked to a lot of the reservists or National Guardsmen that had all these multiple years in that they still have to wait, a lot longer to get their retirement. You would think that the government would be like, hey, it was kind of an interesting 21 years. Let's make a modification of this, but that's probably not going to happen. So good to dream.
Yeah, I think they'd make some adjustments. So depending on the number of months you've been deployed, you can pull that retirement forward a little bit, but you still wait. And that was definitely an advantage I had as an AGR, able to collect that retirement now, as opposed to waiting until I turned 60 or 58.
So You said you originally wanted to go active duty.
Mhm.
Things changed. What changed?
I think a lot of it was the change in the environment. So Desert Shield, Desert Storm had just ended. So almost everyone in my ROTC class, the class prior to us, commissioned active duty, whether they wanted it or not. In my class, only 2 people got it, and I wasn't one of those 2. So there was a significant drawdown,
Right.
and I guess the combination of branches or whatever. I guess my performance just wasn't that great, whatever it was. But you go in as a college kid thinking, well, hey, all of them got it. I'm definitely in. I'm a scholarship. Didn't work out that way. And funny, I went back to the advanced course 4 or 5 years later, and then they're like, hey, anybody want to come active duty? Because we don't have any captains. Because I did 5 years ago.
No, I don't. Yeah. What was that like? I mean, it's you want to go active duty. You've been around that your whole life, and then all of a sudden things don't work out. What was your thought process? Or
well, my first thought process was I done messed up, Aaron, because I put all my eggs in that active duty basket. So I didn't do any internships or anything like that. Right? I'm going to the Army, boss. So I quickly had to adjust and find somebody that was willing to give me some work. Of course, my plan was to stay in Georgia and live the life down there. Not so much. Ended up coming up to Ohio, Columbus, to see some friends, and was fortunate to land just a quick temporary job. So I went through a period where I was an admin person. I flavored popcorn at the popcorn outlet on Bethel Road. I washed some dishes at Schmidt's. So I still have trauma from the Oompa music that played over and over and over. I mean,
it started curling up in a ball when you hear it.
Yeah, it digs in. And I worked at Sunny 95, and I worked at a car dealer. So, you just hustle and you try to find something that sticks. And I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate to have the guard at that time, even though I didn't want to be there, but at least there was a source of income for me and a foothold here in the community. So I was able to build on that, and then had some great people that gave me chances in the civilian workforce, and got to do things that I probably shouldn't had any business doing. Got to work in government relations for the Chamber of Commerce, got to do media relations for the Chamber of Commerce, somehow ended up in website development for e-commerce sites for businesses. So a lot of folks took chances on me, and I'm very appreciative of that, because I hope I didn't mess it up too bad. But that actually carried through to my military career too. Some folks have given me chances that I was able to capitalize on. I could put myself in positions to take advantage of those chances they were willing to give. So I've been very fortunate.
So what do you think the reasons people gave you that chances, or those chances? What do you think the reason was?
You sit here and try not to give some cliche answer like, I work really hard.
Well, tell the honest, man. Yeah.
I think I had demonstrated the ability to, hey, I'll do whatever you need me to do. The first job, for example, I was really there to meet somebody for lunch, and their temp had quit. And they said, hey, can you answer phones? Sure. I just been to signal school. I can answer phones. So I sat down. At that. So I started answering phones, and they were paying me to do it. And then that worked its way into being able to be kind of a paid intern, even though I'd already graduated in public relations, and try my hand at that. So I think just demonstrating that you're willing to work, you're willing to listen, and just have a positive attitude, it just goes a long way. That whole positive attitude thing is really something that carries through even until my last days in the service.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think hard work always trumps. That doesn't trump it, but it does. If people see you working hard, I think people generally give you a chance. I mean, yeah,
they'll overlook some of the warts if you're working hard, and it's not you'll say you work hard. You have to show them that you're working hard.
Because I always have able and willing, right? So like hard work is willing, right? Able is something different. Like not everybody's willing and able, but I would take someone that's willing and not able. Does that make sense?
Yeah, versus able.
So the hard work, you can teach them. Sometimes we talk about like if someone's able and able and not able and not willing is like the worst to me. That's like the one where you're like, not to go after this current generation, but I feel like sometimes that's what it is. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about my kids, Josh. Come on now. No, but that's how I think I always used it that way. Is like, if someone's willing, it goes a long way. You know what I mean? And able could be able to do it, but also, like you said, a good attitude. And
yeah, and I think over time though, I learned that hard work's a dangerous term, or I'm a hard worker is a dangerous term. And you don't always see it in yourself But as I got older and realized the things that I had missed out on because I was working hard, I definitely tried to change my approach a little bit, especially when I would deal with younger officers or other people that I was working with. It's like, hey, what are you doing? What are we doing here? What's your family doing right now? And I feel I was late to the table in recognizing that. My joke that's not really funny is I said, why do we always cry when we get promoted or at ceremonies when we mention our family? Why do we always cry? It's because we lied to our families the most. Always.
It could be, yeah.
We lied to them over and over and over. I'll be right home. Hey, yeah, buddy, I'll make your game. Hey, no, I don't have to go anywhere. Yeah. And before you know it, the time has gone. Now, I've been I don't like the term blessed, but I've been fortunate in that my wife is amazing and she has stuck by me. My son has been very understanding and has continued to be a great part of the family and not really walled me off that I can realize anyway, due to the times that I was away. Because it wasn't just deployments, it's, we got to do a week here or 2 weeks there or TDY this and just the staying at work for no reason. So as time progressed, I really tried to counsel those around me, especially if I had some influence over them, that don't just talk about work-life balance. You have to execute work-life balance like it's a mission. Yeah. Because that time is gone.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think, and for the people that weren't in that listen, they may not understand this. What you're saying is like, if you're in the Army, like you don't work an hourly schedule. And then generally if your boss, you don't want to leave before your boss. And
you don't want to get in after him.
Sometimes you do want to leave before your boss, but your boss doesn't want you to leave before them. And what if you're not careful, what you do see is, like you said before, is quickly is like this guy or gal is staying there because they don't want to go home. They're trying to, they're numbing or trying to get away from something they don't want to do. And then they just pass it on to you. And sometimes it's direct, right? Sometimes they're like, I had a company commander that was like, you don't leave until I leave. Mm-hmm. You're here when that's how it goes. Or it's indirect where they don't tell you, but it's kind of implied, right? Like, and that you don't realize that either as a leader. If you are staying there for that reason, you probably shouldn't be number one, but don't be letting your subordinates continue to do that. That's what I learned real quick in the military. There's a lot of people that were, and people always go like, why didn't you just leave? It just wasn't like that. It's just, it's like, it was like a double-edged sword. You'd be like, oh my God, I just want to get because one of my company commanders, we used to have to be there for PT at 5:30 in the morning. PT started at 6:30. We'd sit in his office from 5:30 till 6:25. And sometimes he wouldn't say a word to us. Like we just sit there for 55 minutes. Like he would be on his the one or two computers in the company. He would be doing stuff, and then like at 6:22, he'd go like, "Do you have anything for me? Do you have anything for me?" And then
why?
It's a good question. I mean, it's some people have the power trip, but yeah, it's definitely
Now, would you prefer the person that's direct with you and says you don't leave until I do, or would you prefer the one that walks by and goes, "Oh, I noticed you left before me yesterday"?
Well, the second one is different because if you're good at your job, that never is said to you because right. You don't leave until they leave.
He doesn't creep around.
You know what I mean? You had to be. I preferred when you had I had an NCO one time. It was actually later in my career when I was getting out. I was with ACRC, and I was fighting ways to stay at work because I was like, we're getting out of there too early, just to change in my normal mission thing. That's a lie. I was used to staying home, work late, and not dealing with work stuff, and I didn't want to go home and deal with what it was dealing with at home, and I can only mow the yard once a week or whatever, but I was used to being away, so it was more comfortable to be in the office. And the other thing is he was my NC, E8, and I was like, I'm not gonna leave before him because I don't want to look bad. And finally after 2 weeks, he's like, what are you staying here for? And I'm like, well, what are you staying here for? He's like, I'm actually doing my college degree. And it's quiet for me. He's like, go home, sir.
You're messing me up.
Yeah, get out of here. No, he's like, go home, don't stay here. And that's I'd hope that it's changed by now, but I don't really think it. I mean, it's gotten better. I hope it's gotten better, but yeah, it's a different thing. And that goes the same thing in the civilian world.
Absolutely.
That is a good term you said about the working hard, because a lot of times working hard is code word that you're trying to be away from something else.
And it grates on you. And what are you really accomplishing? Yeah. And before I was active duty, I had when I was working at the e-commerce company, we were about to have my wife was going to the hospital to have our son. And of course I'm going, but I bring a computer. Like, what? First of all, what was I really going to do? And second of all, who was really expecting me to do something? But in my brain, I was like, well, this is how I show them how hard I work.
Yeah.
And then I created unnecessary friction, inside my own head about, well, this is what I should be doing. But meanwhile, I'm alienating my wife and I'm not spending time. It wasn't so bad, but I was down that path where I got to bring this in case something happens. Who's going to call you when you just had a baby? I mean,
you'd think that, but
yeah,
you do have those special people in the military
but I think the climate has definitely changed. Again, my area of observation is much smaller now. I retired in February of 22, and even though I walked out the door, fingers high in the air, I'm never coming back here. I came back there to work as a contractor. Right. So I get to see the office and the people I worked with in the environment. And what I've been able to see is I do believe that there is a move towards more balance. Yeah. And I think COVID really taught us, I don't have to see you to know things are getting done. Now, that's not true for everyone, but it really broke us of that. I need you to sit in the conference room because something might happen mentality.
Yeah, and it was also like communication too. Like I just want to go back to how hard that was for sitting there for 55 minutes, but you didn't have a phone to be on, and looking at anything. You were just sitting there, staring at one another, and staring at your company commander like, what the hell's wrong with? And if you're wondering who it is, it's Captain Odom. If he's listening, Wesley Odom. But no, it's. But I also learned a lot from him. There were great things to learn. But yeah, I think that mentality, it's changed time where you don't have to. Yeah, you're right. You don't have to be in every formation to disseminate. I can imagine now talking about having chat groups where you can get a hold of your platoon and tell them stuff. Man, that'd be kind of wild to be able to okay, you can put some stuff out. Mm-hmm. You don't have to bring everybody in.
You have to wait till all the officers and senior NCOs are done with their meeting before you can let everyone go.
That's crazy, but
yeah.
I don't know if I'd like to be able to chat back what they're thinking on some things, but no. Yeah, it was definitely, that's definitely a culture that you think has changed, but then again, maybe not. Those people, if you're that person or that. I
think it's changing, especially with in our world, in the guard world. I keep saying our world because I do miss it. I miss that we get to do a lot of cool things, but I don't miss the constant stress, the constant grind. You mentioned something about, well, why don't you just leave? My wife I'd come home and say, hey, I have to go to Grayling or Fort Knox or something. She's like, okay, when? Well, tomorrow. Well, tell them no. Like, what? It doesn't really work that way. You can't really tell them no. But she would grit her teeth and bear it. But it always made me chuckle every time because I think she was just doing it to get my goat. But just to look at me and go, well, just tell them no. You got something going on.
Yeah, we have a game tomorrow. You can't leave.
Yeah, well. If we want to keep driving these cars, I do.
No, it isn't. It's an interesting dynamic. I think I think part of her probably knows she can't, but part of it, they think they
I think that was her
vent. There's a lot of, you can only say no. And in the Army, you really can't, you don't have a choice in that, right? You could have, I just don't imagine a military where you're like, oh, can I leave on Thursday because yeah, and maybe it should be that way. Because some of the times, to be honest with you, some of the stuff we've all done in our career is was it really that important that we had to leave that next day, or do we really have to do that? I think though those are some concrete examples where you can look now and see evidence of the change. So an example, my last assignment, I was the senior full-timer for the 37th, and I was the brigade XO, and we were going to JRTC. My parting gift, I guess. Beautiful. And which of course meant years of ramp up to go there, and that. As we were getting ready to go to the leader brief part where you go down and get whipped for a week or so before you go on your rotation, my dad had just passed then. And I was torn. I'm the XO. I gotta go. And I had a leader, I had a boss, General Woodruff, who took me aside and had a conversation. Was like, you don't have to go. We'll make do. He let me take my son to college when we were in the middle of our warfighter exercise out in the field. He's like, yeah, because that was already planned before I went. And he's just one example of leaders, I think, that, and now that he's the assistant adjutant general, he has some influence and can
I think people see his actions, and the G3 that I worked for is very much that way now too, and understands that we can't just constantly grind, because that creates that fight mentality all the time.
Yeah. You got some E4 though, and the Ohio Army National Guard are fired up because he had to go to that JRTC and he didn't get out of it.
Oh, I still
You
had
can
to go.
send your complaint to Mike Draper. I'll give you his government email when we close it. No, but
Don't worry, I still had all this down in the swamp in the summer. I mean, that was just the leader teach portion in December.
Yeah, you do hope that there's something. You always look back, but there's always, hindsight 2020. You can look back and say all the bad things. But I think when that was happening to me, it just made me very cognizant as I took roles of more responsibility. I was like, oh, make sure you were that person said, hey man, you don't need to stay around here. Go, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Because, that's just the culture that, what.
You got to really work with the junior leaders, officers and enlisted, and let them, or try to work with them to really develop a skill where you identify what is really important, because you'll never be caught up. That's the other thing. All the red check marks in your inbox are never going to go away. But what are the ones that are going to get you nuked? Because that's what I need you to get done, and the rest will wait. You're not going to be any later on that report that no one cares about. So go home and see your kids.
Good master. Let's talk inboxes, email. That wasn't a question I had, but it is going to be a question now. Are you an inbox person? Like, how many unread emails do you have in your inbox?
Well, since I'm out and they can't yell at me anymore, I probably had over 1,000. Wow. Now though.
So that's work email. What about, we'll talk work email. What's unread work? Unread
work right now?
Yeah.
0.
Okay.
0. But I do a fraction of what I had to do before.
What about personal?
Personal is a joke, because I had about 3 different email accounts, because you want to do that one where all the junk mail comes and your serious one, and then you mix them up, and then Time Warner Roadrunner deactivated. So now I have just boxes of email I can't access. I'm a digital hoarder, I think what you're trying to pick at.
Yeah, I think like my wife has like 10,000 unread messages, like emails, and it drives me crazy. So it's a joint email we have. There's like 10,000 of them, and I'm like, and you look at them, and she's like, well, the ones that's all junk, and I'm like, well, then unsubscribe from it. You know what I mean? So then I do that, and I get it down to like 7,200, and I feel good. But I'm at work, I have to read like. You see people, there work people that have that too. They're like a lot of unread emails. But what about how many emails you keep in your inbox?
Yeah, back then,
I'm a folder guy.
Yeah, I was a PST guy.
Okay.
And then now the government has given us plenty of space. So I am a big folder guy. I get them out of that box, and that little function where you can automatically make it a task and then shoot that bad boy to OneNote. Hey, you're cooking.
I don't think we get into this conversation.
You're cooking with
because I try to
right
stay
there.
under 30 emails in my inbox.
Red?
No,
just
like
total?
they're red, but just things I have to do. Like if I can get under 30, I feel like I'm like firing off. If I go on vacation, I still read my email, and I get like back to work, and there's like 200 or whatever. You start getting like, oh God, I gotta get these into folders.
Then you start marking them. These are important, and suddenly they're all listed important.
I folder everything, and I folder everything for 2 reasons. Number one, it cleans up your inbox, and then also when someone says like, "Why did you do something?" and you're like, "Oh, let me go back to 2019 when you told me to do that." Yeah. But,
I had a boss. I swear his email management was he would crash the computer and it would all get wiped, and he'd go, "Hey, I lost all my emails. You're gonna have to resend it."
But I mean, yeah, when you see somebody else like 1,000 red emails in their inbox, I'm like, how do you? Yeah. I mean, it's just.
And you have to.
I don't know where that question came from.
I tried to tell you try to tell people, hey, if it's something for me, you better make it to me. If you're CCing me, which was my problem, so everybody in the whole brigade full-time side would copy me on things.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, you're cool copying me because I can always search and find it. But if you're banking on me to read it and then respond to it, then you better put me in the 2 line and go, hey, I need you to do this.
I'm glad we got to the email conversation. We haven't had one though. So the two thing I was trying to tell my co-op, 2 is people that you expect to take action. That's how I've always been taught it. CC is you just want them to know. And then the other dirty part of it is, what do you think of the blind courtesy copy?
That's shady. You are shady. If you're not going to say it till people can see it,
I see you're a bitch if you do that. Like, I mean, if you BCC blind courtesy copy somebody, like no, come on. See, I knew Josh would come back from that. Nope. I think it's the most cowardly way to do things.
Agreed. I try to be.
I don't like. I just. I mean, yes, that's not true. Someone's going to probably lecture me about it later on about how it'd be Josh when it's appropriate. But I just feel like it's because I feel like you're trying to bait someone to see something. The person, who you're sending it to, you just want to see what they're going to do, and it's just this weird.
Like on Mean Girls when they keep swapping the phone. Hey, did you hear what she said
yeah.
about you, Gretchen? That's what BCC is.
Right. And the other thing I think drives me nuts is that you can send an email to time.
Not like that.
Because I feel like there's a person that's sending an email at 9 o'clock. Are you really sending it at 9 o'clock, or did you just? Are you trying to look important, like you're really tuned in? I'm like,
but to be fair,
because for you to switch, I mean, if you switched it to 9 o'clock, I want to set it at 9 o'clock
p.m.
Yeah, so I got to create the email. It's 4 o'clock. Why am I waiting till? I know there's some cases why I need to wait till 9. Some announcement will be made and it's some official thing. But I'm talking like, I mean, I've seen people use like 4 o'clock. It's more in the morning, like in the military. It's like someone sent at 4 o'clock, and you're like,
yeah,
Mike. No one knows. Everyone knows you're not on the phone. You know what I mean?
You're probably drunk. And to be fair, I've used it most recently to make it send the next day. So honestly, somebody didn't get a bang on their work phone that I sent them an email. But you're right. It is there. Don't let me trick you that I didn't think about that a little bit and say, hey, yeah.
Jay said, blind Curtis Scott for all associates, emails to prevent reply to all. Yeah. Oh, yes. That's a good. Jay brought up the reply to all. Like, I feel like if you reply to all to your whole thing, you should be fired immediately. Because then if you reply to all, you ever have that, like where the person, they reply to all and then someone replies to all, take me off of the distribution list. And it ends up like 30 people do that. And you're like, what just happened? And it's just everybody.
Have you not heard of the great Saint Rhonda?
No.
Of the reply all saint of email? So it was a few years ago. And I'm sure Rhonda, bless your heart if you're out there, is a super sweet person. She's one of the little old ladies in tennis shoes that works at some 3-Core or something like that. But Rhonda replied to all. And then someone said, replying to all, hey, you replied to all. And she goes, sorry, I didn't mean to reply to all. And it just kept going. And I think I was up to 200 and some, because, you make the rule to shove them in a folder because you want to count how many there are. And now there's little memes about Saint Rhonda of the reply all.
Yeah, because I feel like they should be able to put that on. I think that only certain people can do that. You know what I'm saying?
The only certain people should have that ability.
Look at you, yeah. Because you have that person. It's like, because we had a meeting when I first got in the job. And I know they had it happen, and they had to come on and then say, "Hey, everybody, stop." Another reply all email to everybody to stop replying all. And it was just like the most comical thing. There's 800 messages in like 3 minutes. Like, wow, someone's getting in a lot of trouble for that.
This is Colonel.
Maybe you shouldn't be fired by that, but you should.
I don't know.
Somebody should teach you that.
But it's the best when Colonel so-and-so gets on and says, this is Colonel so-and-so. You will cease and desist. And like, sure, sir. We'll do that.
Now we're under email. What do you think about What do you think about when you're typing an email and bold the lettering and make it red? Are you being aggressive on that?
You're very aggressive.
Okay.
I'm still kind of wishy-washy on digital. Like, all right, hey, good morning. And, sincerely. And people are like, that's wasted space. Just what do you want? But definitely, if you're coming at me all caps and in red, come on now.
Well, not all caps, because all caps, some people don't. It's easier to type that way. Some people, I've seen a lot of people type all caps because they don't want to capitalize some words. Right? But, going all caps, bold red. Is that like the equivalent of yelling?
That's aggressive. Maybe come talk to me face to face then. Or tell me to come talk to you face to face.
I didn't thought we were talking about email, but I recently did that, and someone was like, "Oh, you shouldn't have read it because you're being aggressive." I'm like, "Am I not being aggressive? I'm not trying to be aggressive. I'm just trying to." And then I changed it to blue just to highlight the parts, and then the person that I sent it to responded back to me in red, and I was like, "This guy's getting aggressive with me," and we're just laughing.
We're
but
escalating.
It's just, the red, I don't know. I just think I think it's funny just to talk about this because email is still a lot of things can get lost and intentions and stuff like that can go. Pick up the phone sometimes, right?
Or just walk down the hall and talk to them.
They just call everybody on the phone instead of reply all on there. But
see, that's hard too, because I like talking to people, but if you text instead of calling, then you remember what you said. Because that's where I get into a trap. I'll start talking on the phone, and whoever it is, like, you already told me that. Well, what about this? You told me that too. Sorry, if I just texted you, I could look back and said, this is what we talked about.
Like from memory?
Yeah, digital memory.
Then it's a written document of what you said. I mean, then you can't get out of it. Like, I didn't say to do that. Oh, let me, no, it has its purposes. I think there's like that. I feel like the phone is still an important tool, especially when things aren't going well, or it's a touchy subject. It's better to be on the phone because you can read who the person is. You know what I mean? Because in the email, it can get messed up sometimes pretty easily.
Especially if you take your former military tone and then try to in a civilian environment send the same message. I'm like, why are you yelling at me?
But like my thing is when texting though, is like sometimes it's easier just like, Mike, what do you want? Like I'll say to my wife, like, ask the boys what they want for dinner. Like call Ben. And then my wife will say, hey Ben, how is your day going? I love you, bud. How was golfing? You know, and you're like, we're in line, like and then she's like, I just don't want to ask him what he wants to eat. I'm like, you know what I mean? So it's like, like you said before, being too, I'm like, what the fuck do you want to eat? Like, you know what I mean? Or calling. It's like, but my dad says none of us answer the phone. No, he's over there like stressing out. I have one kid.
He wasn't answering earlier.
I know. Yeah. One kid. If you need to get a hold of Millers, you call Gabe because Gabe will answer the phone. He knows how to get a hold of us, except for now because he's on vacation. This week he'll be on vacation next week, so we're kind of off the grid for a little bit.
Well, remember when we were younger, you'd fight to answer the phone. I had a sister, and it would be American Gladiators who could get to the phone first.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than like when you're texting someone and then you call them and they don't answer. It's like you just text me, you know what I mean? And then, it's always I mean, I've been guilty of it too. Don't get me wrong, but no.
Now, do you text before you call? I don't want to just interrupt. Let me just send a text.
So is there anything else you want to talk about email? I didn't think we'd go into that.
Oh, it is a fascinating topic. I do. Let's recap. You're a folders guy. Cool. I am a folders guy as well. Previously, a lot of email in the inbox. Currently, I try to maintain 0 in the inbox. But really, we're just pushing them off into a zero.
Ooh, I didn't catch that. That's a little psychotic though, because I feel like you got to keep something in there to know what you're focusing on a little bit. I mean,
I try to get to 0. I'm not always successful, but again, I'm only doing, compared to the things I used to have to manage, I only do a fraction of that work now. No one's trying to get a hold of this guy. So my traffic is way down, a lot easier for me to manage.
And we've both determined that the 2 is for people that you want to do
people do shit. And BCCs are shady.
BCC is shady. The Slim Shady.
We're good.
So
that'd be a good hat. BCC is shady.
I just feel like I don't even know what to say when you can find, because you're wanting to catch somebody. That's the only way you're BCCing. Come on. Yes, it is, man. You're just trying to, why would you not want the person to know? I'm having the conversation with Josh that you want the other person in the conversation.
I agree. And then,
if you're trying to catch somebody doing something like they shouldn't be doing, but I just feel like it's shady, Josh.
Then your recipient can say, I don't need to tell Josh. He's already in the CC.
And you're like, little do you know that. No.
Yeah.
I think that's another function that should be. If you're listening, Microsoft Outlook, get rid of that. Shady.
Get rid of BCC. No, who knew?
If you're down with BCC, you're not for me.
Pours with patriotic email.
That's crazy. I didn't think we'd talk about email for 10 minutes.
The dominant part of our lives.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, it is a huge part of life. So you ready? You ready to have your first featured whiskey?
Cheers. Let's do it.
You're like slow rolling that one over there.
Oh, this is like my 4th one. No. This would be the Whistle Pig that was in the back.
Okay. What'd you think of it?
Oh, it's quite tasty. Right. Quite tasty.
Well, we'll go to our first featured whiskey while you're doing that. That's what you brought. You ready to look? Oh wow, you're ready to go. I like it.
You threw the gauntlet down.
I know. You're like, I didn't mean to do that, but last time I did that with the last guest, I thought he was gonna have a heart attack from doing that. But we're having one of our favorite. It's one of my favorite distilleries. I was glad you brought on Jim Beam. Love Jim Beam. It's been some of the stuff I've been drinking the longest in my entire life, the Jim Beam products, and especially Knob Creek. But Jim Beam is located in Claremont, Kentucky. It produces some of the best-selling brands of bourbon in the world. Since 1795, there's been 7 generations of Beam family folks that were involved in the production of whiskey at the distillery. The brand became Jim Beam in 1943 in honor of James B. Beam, who rebuilt the business after Prohibition. Fred Noe and his son Freddie Noe are the current master distillers. Fred took over in 2007. I can't remember when they initially said Freddie. I think it was like 21, 22 maybe. And now it's pretty cool to have both father and son. A great duo to meet if you ever get a chance. So the distillery and Jim Beam brand were both purchased by Beam Suntory or Suntory Holdings in 2014. In 1992 is when you started seeing the Knob Creek bourbon come online. The 6th generation Booker Noe decided to bring back what he considered the pre-prohibition style bourbon. So they brought back or created Knob Creek, and you brought in, like, Jim Beam releases Knob Creek and different versions now. There's a 15, a 17, the 12 year you brought in, and we've got one we'll talk about later, which is cool. But this came around in 2022. I think, or 20. I'm sorry, 20 is when they released the 12, and it was the same time they brought back the 9-year Knob Creek age stated, and then also at the same time that why I paired it is when people in the private barrel program were getting 15, 16-year age stated single barrel. So glad to have that. I'm excited to have this. My only thing is I don't like that's 100 proof. I wish it was higher proof, but great bottle. So the Knob Creek 12-year Kentucky Spirit, like I said, is 100 proof. It is 12 years old, and it's the Knob Creek mash bill, 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley.
It's a lot of math.
Yeah, a lot of it. Excited. I'm so excited this one. So why is this one of your favorites?
Well, I don't necessarily have a specific reason it's a favorite. I'm more of an experienced drinker. So if I have something and I really like it, and it's when we're doing something that's a lot of fun, that becomes my new favorite thing. Okay. I had always liked the taste of Knob Creek, and this, I just happened to stumble into the Dirty Liquor Kroger there on 23, and they had a few bottles of it just sitting there, and I just happened to grab it up, and don't regret that I did. So we have a few different varieties of Knob Creek in the cabinet. I really had my collection made, and I hesitate to even call it a collection, but we never really had any liquor in the house, and recently that's changed. And then when I retired, you can imagine the gifts that came, and I'm very appreciative for. We still have some left. And Knob Creek was in the mix. And so that became something that was a go-to that we went to when we didn't have a better idea of what we wanted. And it's always treated us right, if you will. And then I was excited when they had the 12-year there, and took it right home and popped it open. Now, unfortunately, I had left it in the car a little too long, so it was very warm, but made it for a quick effect.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, I've always been a big Jim Beam fan, and Jim Beam, especially Knob Creek. It's always fun to hear people talk like trash about it a little bit. It's one of those brands, but I'm always like, if you go there, you get a 9-year bourbon, and they've been doing it a long time for a while, and it's a really good price if you ask me. I mean, what's crazy about the one we'll have later that was over 15 years is that it was, I think, $39.99 at the time.
Yeah.
Which is, I
mean, if you like it, you like it. And when people get in so many arguments about, well, that's cheap, or that doesn't taste good. Well, that's my taste. And if I like it and I enjoy it and it's this price range, and I guess that's what I like. And so that's what's fun about trying different things. So we have things from all over the scale, and we'll find something that we like and just bury it into the ground and then jump to something else.
Yeah, it's an interesting hobby or passion, because it is, like you said before, a lot of this too is like the experience you have drinking and who you drink it with, and things like that can make it taste a little better than it actually is. But
I mean, the best beer I ever had in the world, and I've been a few places in the world, was just a regular old Coors Light at Cedar Point when it was 1,000 degrees and a seagull took a dump on me as soon as we walked in.
So
and we got that Coors Light, and that was the best beer I ever had.
What a way to remember Coors Light.
Hey,
I mean, that should be a commercial. Maybe that'd be the next Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah, real men of seagull crap.
The real men of. That's a great way to remember it. Did your dad drink whiskey at all?
No.
Nothing?
No. Dad was a very straight up and down beer guy. And when I moved my mom out here from Pennsylvania, where they lived, and they still had the military special bottles from his retirement in 1992, plastic delicious bottles of military special. Yeah. So that was kind of the limit of his willingness to, that I know of. I mean, he obviously had a long life before me and when I wasn't around, but I think he was just a regular old Yingling and cheap beer drinker.
Yeah, Yingling was big in PA.
Oh yeah. We used to have to smuggle that back out here to Ohio. There was a whole Smokey and the Bandit thing going on.
Yeah, I have a great Yingling smuggling store. Yeah, because it was the beer. Like my good friends his wife was from Philly, so they would go back and bring Yingling, and so we'd always bring it back. And then it ended up getting distributed to the East Coast for a while. And then I moved to Fort Knox, and they didn't have it. So we went back to visit them at Bragg, and I ended up bringing back like 9 or 10 cases of Yingling.
Was it in the reused bottles?
It was
too?
In bottles, and it was, and so the whole ride back, it was like jingling in the back. We have 3 kids, 2 kids jingling, and then loading it. Then I get home and I'm loading it all into our house, and my neighbor's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Don't worry about that." And so I would like drink, 1 Yingling and then drink 2 other beers, so I didn't want to run out of it. And if you came over and asked for a Yingling, I was like, "No, you're not getting a Yingling," because you couldn't get it. And then you come to realize, like, wow, I've been through 1 case in 5 months. I need to start sharing this with other people who are just drinking it. But now Yingling's everywhere.
Yeah. But back then it was a whole smuggling operation.
That was a big deal. We're talking about all kinds of things I didn't think we were going to talk about. So we're going to get back on track, right? Or not?
We don't have to.
The email one got a lot of traffic. So what did Jay Black say? We'll end the email quote with. He said, email, text, calls, I think have different levels of urgency. If it's critical, phone call is possibly best, followed by email with details of the call.
Yeah. I think that's
no one's got time for that, Jay.
Definitely on point. If you got some bad news you got to tell the ball, you better be picking up that phone. Don't text or email them. You're calling.
Yeah, because every time my sons call me, I feel like it's bad news. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah. What do you want?
What? Who got in a car accident? How much money do you need? And what? Yeah, because I do get stressed. My kid. Do you get stressed when your son calls you?
He never calls me. He and I text, and it's like grunting back
Max,
and forth.
Come on.
Yeah, it's like, ugh. You see that score? We're both huge Crew fans and soccer fans, and so we'll be watching the same games, and one word texts and pictures back and forth. Meanwhile, he talks with my wife like an hour and a half a day, but that's fine. I keep up to date.
Yeah, it's like my dad. My dad doesn't call me; he just calls my wife and talk. They talk forever. That's how I know if he's alive. But no, I generally, when my sons call, I freak out because like they don't generally call you just to be like, "Hey, what's going on? How's your day?" It's like, oh.
So I'm going to really spin it.
Where's my social security card, Dad? No,
what about FaceTime? Forget about that.
We're staying on technology. I like the FaceTime. You're not a FaceTime guy?
No.
Why?
Do you want this that close?
I mean, give everybody a close up, Josh. Give him a close up. Let's see it. Give him a close up. Do we want it this close? This is like FaceTime. You're FaceTime right now.
Yeah, I was wondering if you needed anything from the store. Nobody needs that.
Yeah, but FaceTime it's again. I thought we were gonna get off this, but maybe not. It's a good subject.
I keep
FaceTime.
Thought you were out.
FaceTiming is like you don't FaceTime. I think you can FaceTime the store if you need something. Like the person that's like,
is this the right catch up?
Yeah. But I've seen people that have like in the cart. Have you ever seen? And they have their headphones in, and they have the phone propped, and they're like talking to somebody on FaceTime while they're shopping. Yeah. I'm kind of like that's.
At least they had headphones.
I like FaceTime though. I like a FaceTime. You see what people's doing. People are.
Unless you have a cute baby that you just had, or there's a puppy or a kitten or something, I don't need to see your face. I barely want to talk to you on the phone. I definitely don't want to see your face.
I don't know.
And you don't want to see this one.
I think the FaceTime can be appropriate. It's a nice keeps you connected a little bit.
That's good. Okay.
But that kind of happened with everything else. Think about this. Think about you just talking about before we were setting up. When COVID hit, you'd have conference calls. Nobody was getting on cameras. Like it was Zoom. Everybody's getting on. So now you can see what people are actually doing. Like you get to, see their expression. You get to see whether or not they're actually at work. like that's the other thing. So let's talk about the being able to put a fake background up. Because that's a weird.
Shady.
Yeah, shady. Because like people are like, where are you really at? You know what I mean?
You see the guy that's at the football game that has the library behind him?
Yeah, but I just think it's one of those funny things when you're always like, where are they at? I mean,
and you can tell it's fake.
I wish it would just like be like blank. They have because the problem is when they do the blur, I'm always trying to figure out what's in the background of the blur. I'm not even paying attention. I'm like, where are they at?
Is that a sex dungeon?
Yeah, what is that? Why can't they just have it where it's blacked out? I mean, come on, we're giving a lot of tips here to Outlook, and
we should call them.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Teams, figure it out, Microsoft. But yeah, there's no because the backgrounds they have are awful. It's like they're super distracting. You're like, whose living room is that? Is what I want to know, because you need to talk to your designer because some of them are not great. And then there's a lot of distractions going on in the background. You're like,
what book is that? I took a picture in the stadium at lower.com, and then that's my background. When I put a background up, usually it's just me sitting at the office, but
it's cool.
Sometimes.
So Ola said she personally liked the Mean Girls reference.
Oh, I know Ola.
From ETMS.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But I think she still wants me to drag my son out to their church Get him a wife out there.
Good reason. No, but yeah, it's interesting with technologies. Brought up some conversations that this is the longest I've talked about an off topic.
So like the new
that wasn't even in
equipment,
my notes, man.
like the new equipment, that's either a good thing or we will never speak of this again.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. But I'm against you. We've been doing pretty good, but I'm all about a good FaceTime. You know, as long as it's not like you're FaceTiming from the bathroom.
Why are you hunched over?
Or you're the FaceTime walking like you want to be connected in the grocery store. FaceTime driving.
Yeah, or the speakerphone right up here. It's like it's a speaker. You don't have to.
Yeah, the headphones are a weird thing too. Like the headphone is a weird thing too, right? When people walk around with the headphones talking, because you think they could be talking to you and then you realize they're not. But at least it's gotten better because remember, like when we first were going to like the Jabra, the 1 ear piece that was like the big old microphone, and I think people were just getting that to look like they were important again. Who do you need to talk to when you're in Kroger? Like,
or these people doing news interviews that aren't an official. They're just some guy on the street and they got their Bluetooth Jabra in there. Hold on, I'm waiting on a quick call from the pizza place.
Do you remember the Jabra? That was everybody had to have those. And how expensive they were. It was crazy.
Oh, everything. Well, remember thumb drives?
Yeah.
So I had a 254 megabyte thumb drive. I think it cost me $70 some. And now you get 2 gigs for 50 cents at the Staples. How old am I?
But the one thing that has not changed is printer toner cartridge. Let's talk about that.
Still sucks.
What do you think of the price of?
I do that membership thing, the HP thing. So they just keep mailing them to me.
What you don't know is it's more expensive. It's more valuable than gold right now.
Probably.
If you guys need a toner cartridge, just go to Mike's house. I should have hit you up because I just spent. I go on there to get the toner cartridge from work, and I'm like, holy crap! I mean, like,
it's crazy.
It's like
you got to have it.
It's like you just buy a new computer and then throw it out. I mean, a printer and then throw it out if you're done. It's gotten crazy with.
Yes,
with the amount of
projectors too. The bulbs are more expensive than the whole projector.
Yeah.
The one eyes. Good times.
Good stuff.
Now you try to be paperless, and that doesn't work either. Sometimes you have to have a piece of paper to look at.
So, are you paperless billing, or do you?
I don't bill anything. I mean,
no, for home. Do you get your bills paperless?
Oh yeah. We pay everything online.
It is good. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I want them to send me something. You know, man, just to be a pain in the ass.
The only one,
but then it ended up backfiring because it's like all stacked up, and you're like, "Why am I?"
Yeah, I don't know. Because early on, of course, we had the binders of everything. Oh, here's all of our electric bills, and here's our cars, and all. And then I deployed, and my wife took everything over, and she's like, "We don't do binders here," and I never took it back. And when I got back, she's like, "Hey, do you want to take this back?" I was like, "No, you're doing a great job." So we got away from a lot of that. And then at work was always binders. But now, try and keep everything. If I get paper now from a receipt, I might scan it and get rid of it.
It's just, I think we can go. What do you think about keeping paper receipts? Like I knew a guy that he kept like paper receipts for like 20 years. Every receipt he got, if he went to McDonald's, he kept them, and he kept them in shoe boxes. That's like hoarding. Like that's
yes.
Because online billing, but like obviously that's I could see remember back in the day we had to balance your checkbook. One of those days you had to get back and balance the checkbook, and you're like, where's the receipt?
Mm-hmm. And
that was a big deal because you didn't know what it was, because you couldn't go online and be like, did I pay $32.16 or was it $30.16? Remember the times in your life when if you paid $32.16 to $30.16, it made a big difference. You're
absolutely
like, we're down to $17.
How about putting $10 into the money machine so you could pull money out? Or stand in line at the PX.
What am I talking about? I still live in those days. No, I'm kidding. But Jacob said that his company only allows the blur option.
I like that.
I like that because it's kind of crazy.
Now I wonder if his company, along with dictating the blur option, which is a good thing, has a complete style guide for everything. Like you can't have any funny pictures for your Teams icon. All of your PowerPoints must look like this. Sometimes we get a little carried away with that.
Yeah, that's true. The picture's interesting because my team's picture is from my emails from 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a beard, a little bit skinnier. But what I love to do is I just hit my 10-year mark at the job, and they just brought that up. They're like, oh, you have to put a real picture up. And I said, hey, no, I want you to know what this 10 years of work of this company will do. Right. And being around all these paint and chemicals. No, There's a lot of stuff. I think we get into this conversation, but
that's a whole separate
branding.
branch.
I'm a big fan of the PowerPoint branding, though.
I don't mind it, but if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. Make
Right.
templates. Don't tell me it's got to look like this, and don't make the template.
Right. No, our company does templates. I'm a big fan of templates. So it's weird how we talk about this conversation. That just happened today because no bourbon behind our desk. That's why it's implemented, actually. Good reason. Good reason. A lot of other stuff's going in the background that
so many rules
you don't want to know. But it just happened to like one of our somebody from our manufacturer, so they put up a presentation today, and it wasn't in our branding. And it was to the customer. And I was like, oh my, are we just doing things we want to do? And she's like, well, it's just like, it's just better to do this. And it's just, it's kind of a smaller crowd. And I was just like, and I found myself distracted by it because I'm looking like, why did she use that font? But yeah, it could be, I understand the branding image. It is a little bit crazy, but.
Yeah, you're right. Because especially you get senior leadership, they'll fixate on something like that and not hear a word you say. Because
I don't care what
you put a bullet, not a check mark.
But that was CAS Q, right? That's when the school used to teach, or that you learned how to.
You never knew what your boss was going to be like, so you had to make sure it was.
You had to tell the difference between Arial Narrow 12 or Arial 11 and be able to identify that. That was a very important.
For those of you at home that are tracking, we currently at our work use Arial Narrow 24. So if you'd like to put that in, sometimes Arial Bold 24 if you're trying to make a point, but.
And red if you want to be aggressive.
Yeah, so aggressive.
We might not even get into any of your career here.
All right, well, I'll stop talking about it.
No, I'm enjoying it. Yeah,
we clearly I did too much email in my career.
Yeah, we can just go through this. It's been short, 20 years now. So what made you decide to go from reserve to AGR? Or National Guard.
I realized after all that time, I liked the people. I liked the opportunities I was able to realize. We had to do a lot of cool things. And I just had finally regained that desire to serve full time. When I was a traditional guardsman, I was focused on my civilian career. I had goals there, things I wanted to do. And while I still enjoy that, I really just felt the pull back towards the military, especially when I didn't have to be there anymore. Once my mandatory service obligation was up, I was like, well, this isn't so bad now that I could leave if I wanted. And I just decided to stay. And opportunities were out there. In fact, I had worked for a media entity in Columbus here. And my battalion commander at the time had called me up and asked if I was interested in working in our operations center as a temporary person. And I was like, yeah. So that was my doorway in. I worked in the operations center at our headquarters. And that gave me the opportunity to really be immersed back in the military side of things and really enjoy what I was doing, learn a lot more about the organization, and then want to be part of it full time.
And then that started your movement of branches.
Yeah. So I was a signal officer in the artillery battalion and had branch transferred to artillery because I loved that unit. I was going to stay in that unit, and branch transferred to field artillery so I could take command of a battery. And then when I got hired at AGR, it was an ordnance position. It was maintenance officer and support ops was the MTO position. And it was the trainer for that battalion. And so I had to go to school to branch appropriately. And I told you earlier, in my stellar career, one of my higher marks was misspelling ordnance in my application to go to the Ordnance Corps. And they still took me. So
at least you didn't put it in your signature block. You just misspelled it.
Ordnance.
OD command. No.
But went out and did my schooling. And again, that's not a regret, but something I wish I had done. I'd already had a lot of schooling, and I was supposed to go and do the full-time option, or it was an option for me to go to the resident course for advanced to transfer over to ordnance. And I didn't do it. I did the correspondence in 2-week phases. And I think I missed an opportunity to really develop a depth of knowledge in the branch that would have served me through my career. I was fortunate that it was an overly negative impact, but I really think I missed a chance to get deep into what would become my career.
The good thing about the Ordnance Corps, a lot of good warrant officers that can help you and teach you that.
Oh yeah, they're a fantastic bunch. I worked in support ops while I was out at the FSB at the time, and then eventually I was fortunate to take command of the Brigade Support Battalion. So I got a whole ordnance company, and also full time was the surface maintenance manager for the state. Again, with that 2-week education down there, I had to have a lot of great NCOs and warrant officers that were very patient and walked me through the things I needed to know. and in some cases even guided me on the better questions to ask to get the information I needed to make decisions or not look like a total buffoon in front of the boss.
Right.
So they were great people to work with. Again, back to what I said earlier, I've been so fortunate to have good communities of people that I've been able to work with. It's just helped me realize a lot of success that if I had shut that community out or not engaged with them or not listened, I would not be in the position I am today.
So you're going into the Hall of Fame of the military. Like, when you go into the Hall of Fame of sports, you've had multiple teams.
Mm-hmm.
What branch are you going in the Hall of Fame as?
Oh, I'm going in as logistics, ordnance logistics. I mean, ordnance over captain rolls right into logistics. So I would definitely wear that proud logistics shield.
Wow. All the field artillerymen are freaking out.
I have some very good friends that are artillerymen, and we got to do some awesome things. But I like to tell them when the infantry guys and the cav and the artillery would start chirping how great they were, and we were just the BSB. I was like, hey, brother, you can fight without us. Not for very long, but you can fight without us.
I'm happy with the answer, except for if you would have said signal, because I would have been like, oh, man, come on, the signal. The signal guys were squirrely, a little squirrely.
But they, you got to be nice to them because they'll get back to email. They'll get your email up and running.
This is an honest God story. When I was S4, so I just made captain. Our battalion signal officer was a brand new second lieutenant, and we're all in the HHC company commander. Well, under MTO, and it was a stupid thing, but he carried a 9mm, and somebody else didn't in the unit. Well, the HHC company commander took his 9mm from him and made him carry around an M4. I think it was M16 at the time. I just want to say how old I was, but
A1.
Yeah, no, it wasn't A1. But and he was fucking pissed. So what he did, he was just mad about it. Well, what he decided to do was he changed the HHC commander's password because he was able to do that. So this guy was not able to log on. And he would go and this guy would be getting, emails. And he did this for like 2 weeks. He would call him in and be like, sir, what's your password? He would tell him what the password was. He would type it, but he would be typing the real password.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. You just can't log it. And I had to pull him aside and be like, man, this is going to explode on you. Cause he's missing emails from,
the old man's trying to reach him.
Like, you shouldn't have fucking. And I was like, wow, that's when I learned you got to be this guy had a lot of control over.
You definitely learn as you get more experienced, who gets the extra cookies, who to not make mad, who to make sure you let go early.
But at the time, the signal, that was like when not everybody had computers either, too. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like today where you knew about stuff. You were like, if you today, you'd be like, come on, dude, you're screwing with me. But like I do a little bit different things. I like messing with people's keyboards at work. I switch letters so that people don't, so that people who like can't type and they use, they have to look at the things. I like to switch a couple letters to see what happens. Well, and I like to do that to competitors because we were kind of all in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that a few years back, and I ended up changing a letter that was in this guy's password. So he ended up getting locked out of his password, and then he got so pissed that he took the keyboard and like threw it away because they thought it was broken. And then so I come back, and they're like, all this is going on, and they're like, and I start getting uncomfortable, start laughing, and like, well, what's so funny? I was like, why move the T and the R or whatever? And his boss was like, don't do that again. Rex can't, he can barely type his name on that. So
Rex is
that's a good prank to do. I mean, that's a good,
just a simple
I recommend that. You can see who
swap
really can
the mouth buttons.
type and it can't be, and I'm not recommending you got to pick your letter. Like use a good one to switch because but don't do like a T, R, because people kind of know where those are at.
Heavy use.
Just a little tip from me if you want to mess with something. Or the mouse, you put the thumb drive in someone's mouse, the dongle, and you just have the mouse somewhere off. You just move that. That's a good way to mess with people. But
I'll write that one down.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a big fan of that one. But yeah, you don't want to mess with Signal though. They can get you. So deployments, and you've had some pretty different deployments that you'd say.
Yeah, I think overall I've been super lucky, the deployments that I had. You go where they tell you, and I was fortunate, and then I didn't really end up in anywhere too wild and woolly. So very fortunate on my part. My first one was to Kosovo. So I get hired AGR. We're sending part of our battalion out on this Kosovo mission. I can't wait to get rid of them because they have all these special needs. Can't wait till they're gone. And then they call me and go, hey, you got to go too. Okay. So we go over. It's a 3-month train up for a 6-month mission. Go guard. And it's not the guard's fault. It's just what they do to us to get us deployed. But that one I can tell you was probably the most rewarding professional development opportunity that I've had. The instructors I was able to learn from, I was the G3 planner, and the instructors I was able to learn from and techniques I was able to put into practice every day were something that I ended up using throughout my career. It was brutal going through it because I remember our one instructor that we called the Great Satan. He would say, well, what does FM50 say about whatever? And we, bunch of captains, we bullshit him and answer. He's like, wrong. I wrote 50. Here's what it says. And you're like, oh, good Lord. But it ended up being an amazing experience. We got to work with multinational brigade. We had Polish, Ukrainian, Greek battalion, R2. We had a Cav squadron and infantry battalion with us, working with all those nations, doing real operational missions every day, even though it wasn't like in the Middle East, nobody was really shooting at us every day, but we were able to do real things all the time. Great experience. And then second one, so we get back in 05, and as we're back, like, hey, get ready. You're going out in 7, turned out to be 8, but still that one, not so much. I was the Brigade S4 full-time. We went and were split up among all the camps, and we had 2 battalions get put on convoy duty. 1 battalion got sent to Ramadi, and the rest of us got stuck babysitting camps. And, the highlight of my day was counting shitters and shower heads. And that's just not really what I wanted to do for a year away from my family over in the hot box. But you do what they tell you to do. I knew it was going to be an interesting deployment when we were going from Arif John to Buring. And, you have to draw your weapon and humana. And they hand me a bag of ammo. Individual rounds in a plastic baggie, and like, here you go. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with that? And this rifle, this is not going to go well for us. But it was just a weird place to be, and it wasn't my favorite. Those were the overseas deals. Obviously, we played a heavy part in Hurricane Katrina and Rita recovery. Half of our brigade was down in New Orleans and Mississippi for the first part, and then as they were coming, we were bringing them home, and then we all flew down and did Rita over in Lake Charles and Lafayette. Interesting to spend, a month plus down there and just see the total devastation and see how grateful people can be. And I don't mean that like, that's right, they should be grateful I'm here, but just to see everybody across the board, what a great leveler a huge disaster is, because the people waiting in line for food and water and tarps would be a Range Rover and an 82 Corolla and a Camino, and then a Mercedes. Nobody had anything. And it just, while devastating and sad, it was also nice to see how people would come together. And these communities that had nothing were bringing things to the soldiers to thank them for being there. And again, I don't say that to be like, they should thank us. It's just the way that people, when faced with adversity like that, people can come together, but how quickly we forget and go right back at each other's throats when things aren't rough.
Yeah.
So that was, an interesting little run down there. A lot of various stuff like that. It was fun.
So what was your favorite of all those points? Kosovo, obviously.
Kosovo. I had a job that allowed me to work with a bunch of super smart people. We had 19 different states and territories lumped into our task force. So I got to meet people from all over Florida. A couple of the pictures or one of the pictures is me and my friend from Florida that I never would have met if it wasn't for that. A good friend from Indiana. Just great people that came together from all over and able to see all these things you learn in school or you should be doing, and you actually get to do it and put it into practice. And I think one of the things that made that even better too is the train up, the people responsible for our training stayed in tune with what was going on over there. They would come visit. So from the day we set foot in Camp Atterbury, and then we went to Hohenfels, and then we went to Kosovo, the bad guys, the cities, everything was the same. They worked very hard to make sure we were well equipped to go in and understood what we were doing and who we were supporting and who we were after. I just thought they did an excellent job, contrasted with what we ended up doing, spending 89 days at Fort Hood to learn how to use Outlook. There it is again, on somebody else's computer, like,
Right.
do I really need, after telling us, the big Army telling us, if you do all this extra training before you get to Mob Station, we'll let you go early. No, we did all the extra training and we still sat there for 90 days, which is just abominable. All these years that the reserve component has been going to war as partners with the active component, they still haven't figured out how the guard works.
Yeah, that's the mobiness. The mob stations are.
Well, I
had to
remember
mobilize the unit out, and I was there for like 90 days. It was the longest.
When I remember seeing
the
generals testifying on some C-SPAN thing, and they're like, General, sir, I will deploy as many times as you want me to. Just don't send me to the damn Mob Station. And it's just ridiculous. It's just a terrible way to do it. And, they're calling up here going, hey, we added this briefing. Could you get all your guys together in the theater and give it to them? Well, what theater, my man? The Rave in Columbus? Or you want me to go to Cleveland and do it? Yeah. Just total disregard for the way the guard still worked.
I think a lot of it, if you go back to how I looked at it, so, in the beginning, I guess the mobilizations made sense when you were bringing people that weren't, the old school National Guard reserves where it was, screwing around most of the time to get everybody on the same page. But, very quickly they didn't realize, hopefully maybe they have, but like, okay, you're bringing this guardsman, this is their fourth deployment to Iraq. They know what to expect. It's just, shorten it that they're, getting the refresher training they need and then get them out and get the clock going, right? Because I think there's nothing worse than, leaving your family and then going to
you're absolutely
Fort McCoy
right
for, 100 days before you then deploy for another,
No, you're absolutely right. The early on, especially when the motto, quite honestly, was like, what can't you teach me in 90 days if things go bad? That was definitely true. We needed 90 days. Yeah. But as you said, after not only the people, but there's still a lot of continuity in units in the reserve or in the guard, especially because we don't go all across the country like the reserves do. Excuse me. At some point, you have to realize if you're sending people out there to evaluate them at home station and certify they're ready, then don't make them do it all over again when you get to the Mob Station.
Yeah.
Send them. But it's a big beast to try and turn.
It's a lot of different things that we'll never solve it, I think, but hopefully. So all those jobs, 20 years, long time, you all the way up to Brigade XO, Battalion Commander, Company Commander, all the fun jobs. What was your favorite job?
I think it definitely was Battalion Command. In fact, when I came out of command, my G4 Mark Raker came to my change of command, which was very nice of him to do. And my remarks were, something along the lines of, I can't believe I'm leaving the best job ever to now go back and be a staff wiener or something like that. And he's like, hey man, I'm right here. Like, sorry, it's, no matter the kingdom, it's always good to be the king. But there is another example where I was surrounded by some incredible people and we were able to take strengths that I had and mesh them with the strengths that they had. And I think really take the battalion on a path of growth and development that we hadn't seen out of that support battalion. Maybe I'm living in a fantasy land, but that's the way I felt that we progressed. And I feel that's the way people perceived us while I was there. And it wasn't just me. It was that whole team was able to mesh really well. One of the things I wanted to focus on while I was there was just try. I want you to increase not only the breadth of your knowledge in your MOS and your skill, but the depth. And if you've never done water purification, let's go do it.
All right.
Let's do it where we can mess it up and no one will get mad.
All right.
Let's just keep trying. And I think we did some good stuff that really changed the culture up there. And it was a lot of fun to be part of that unit.
Yeah. What was the most challenging part about being battalion commander?
The people. And what I mean by an example, right before I took command, I went up there to drill with them. And I saw this young soldier bring her child into the armory on drill. And the first thing I thought, I was like, what in the world? It's not like drills weekend was a secret. Why is this person bringing their kid to the armory? But as I dug in and I listened, what I found was she was dedicated to the unit and liked the unit so much, she didn't want to be AWOL. And her childcare fell through and she didn't know what to do. So she just came to the unit. And hearing things like that and then wondering where we failed people in their moment of need was tough. Here's a soldier that she knew she needed to be there. And instead of being positive about that and saying, hey, let's let's find a way to help her out next time. The attitude was more, we get your kid in here. Like the attitude I had before I listened and learned. And what I found, I think, as I listened to various things as the commander and there's still a line. It's the military. You have to have a line. But I think my line got a lot wider. You know, you could get on that line and you're almost in trouble, but let's find you a way out of it. Where a younger me or earlier in my commands, it was, you cross the line. We must take action. I think the line got a lot wider for me. And then dealing with the loss of soldiers. Young kids, you know, going to their funerals. I remember handing the flag to the parents of one of my soldiers, and I was crying. And, you know, part of me is like, you're supposed to be tough. You can't cry in front of them. You're tough. It was terrible. These people lost their kid, a kid who seemingly had everything going for him. And now they don't have him. And no one could figure out why. Why did we fail that kid? Why am I standing here having to give this family a flag?
So did he take his life, or
he took his life and left a message for his sister on his phone. And you know, on the surface, everything was great. I won't go into details, but everything was great on the surface. And yet, even when you went to the viewing or the reception, nobody could understand what happened. Something so deep in this kid was tearing him up so bad that in spite of all the great things in his life, he ended his life. And that happened more than once. And it's very rough.
Yeah, that's one of the things that always is, you know, it isn't always what it looks like on the surface. And we talked about that a lot, you know, with, you know, if it's always ask the follow-up question, ask how you're doing, you know, because not everybody is holding things together like they appear to be.
No, and they don't want to talk to you. Now, my window was 14 to 17 when I was up there, 2014, 17. We continue to try hard. The military really does try hard. But when you only see these kids twice or once a month, mostly, you can't really dig in. That's when that battle buddy, that friend that knows them outside, or that section leader that does the text chain, that's when they really start paying off, because they can start observing those behaviors that are off the norm. They can offer help. We can put resources together to get them help. But quite honestly, some of these young studs and studettes, they don't think they want help, to their detriment. And it's just heartbreaking. They just
No, I mean, it's why we started doing the podcast, and why we continue to have the mission we have is, you know, to be able to, you know, it'd be great to get this down to 0, but you know, to continue to make an impact on, you know, breaking that stigma, and breaking the mindset that you can't, you know, it's okay to not be okay and to talk about it. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean anything else. It just means that you're human and that you need help. So it definitely starts from, you know, like one of our, you know, 2 models, be resilient. You have to be resilient, but, you know, you have to be there for other people when they do come to you. But yeah, it does start from an individual having the courage to just say they're not okay, because most people are not okay. I'm not okay all the time.
No, and it's hard. And I think personally, I was a long time realizing that I wasn't always okay myself. You know, I think, you know, you think in your head, you're like, well, this is the way it is. Nobody sleeps. You chug coffee and you dip and you make it happen. And you don't realize that you're in your brain constantly battling, and you don't realize the negative impact you're having on the people around you. Or worse, some days you do have that epiphany of the negative impact you're having, and you're trying to reconcile that with the person you're trying to be in the military or in the civilian world, whatever.
Right.
And then you just continue that internal friction inside your head, and you can't let it go.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just like I say, is talking about it, and it's pretty freeing. In the past year, I've been able to, you know, to know what that really means, to be able to talk about how you're feeling, and to be able to talk to other men and women that feel the same way and are doing okay. It's a huge thing. So Josh's hat up there. If you or someone you know is in crisis and considering suicide, please dial the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or 1-800-273-8255. and press 1, or you can text 838-255 or chat online at the veteranscrisisline.net/chat. And then if that doesn't work for you, reach out to your friends. You'd be surprised. Family members, somebody cares. Strangers, they do care. So
they do
have
care.
the courage to make that step, and you'll be surprised that you're not the only one feeling that way. You know, that's what I used to think for a long time, that my pain was unique and I'm the only person that feels this way. And
yeah, that's
refreshment when there's a lot of refreshing, and a lot of guilt and a lot of shame goes away when you're like, wow, I'm pretty normal.
Yeah, when
I'm normal to be. It's okay to be fucked up. I'm fucked up.
Yeah,
you know
everybody
I mean?
is. Yeah. Look at all of us. That's where
great.
I personally did have a good group of leaders, especially towards the end, that was able to help me understand that. And it wasn't necessarily a direct conversation like, hey man, this is this and you're okay. It was through their actions and their leadership, their compassion, and their willingness to take risks when they could, to support not just me, but others that needed time or needed some assistance. Their willingness to do all that set the example that I think is definitely permeating through the organization. But it's such a big organization with so many stereotypes, cliches, beliefs that you got to crack down, that it's a challenge that we're going to have to continue facing head on. And it's not handing someone a magnet that says, oh, you're having a bad day, call this number. And I'm not disparaging the number up there. It's a place, but sometimes you got to grab that he or she by the arm and say, let's come over here. I'm going to take you to this place, because there's an amazing amount of resources out there for people in crisis. But if you're looking at a pamphlet with 1,000 things on it, it's just adding to your burden.
Yeah.
You have to be taken directly and given the help that you need to get you started.
So going back to the suicide advisor battalion commander, like what did this first time we had, not the first time we talked about suicide, but this type of scenario. So what, like, walk through or talk about what happens when that happens in the battalion? What kind of internal look did you guys do at each other? What kind of training was done? Was the spotlight put on you? Did anything change, or was it just kind of,
I'm not going to be
sitting around and like what was that like in the unit to be, to deal with that?
There was
level?
Definitely no sitting around. I mean, on the formal side, there's always an investigation that gets done. And really, the attitudes have to be changed about that too. It's not an investigation to find out who did something wrong that caused this kid to lose their life or to take their own life. It's to find out how we can do things better to prevent that from happening the next time. So on the formal side, there's always an investigating officer assigned. You always go through. Unfortunately, when you sit through a lot of these briefings, what you hear is the same story. On the surface, everything was great. Unit-wise, so many of his friends and fellow soldiers came to the reception, calling hours. I don't know why I'm having trouble with that term, but came to calling hours and were there with the family, and they all were helping each other cope by telling stories. And the bad part is when they're so young too, they're barely in the unit. Mm-hmm. They'll go to basic training and they'll come in, they'll be there 5-6 drills. And though they've done great, they're still not totally integrated. I mean, 6 months is 12 days, Right. So you've been together 2 weeks, good time. But the soldiers as a whole, we had soldiers that volunteered to be part of the detail to carry a casket. We had a lot of soldiers there that were just talking amongst themselves and helping themselves cope with it. You have counselors that are available to come to the unit. You do a sensing session with the unit to talk about who knew the soldier. Is anyone else feeling similarly? Is anyone triggered by this? Let's talk. You try to pull that out, but sometimes the grief, even if they don't know they're grieving, the grief gets in the way and it's uncomfortable. So let's get out of here so the commander will quit yapping at me.
Yeah.
Company or battalion, whoever, but I just want to get out of here. I'm fine. That's when you're relying on those battle buddies to really maintain that relationship throughout the month. And I think you lose some of that too. In the old days, the armory was in town. Everybody in that town was in that unit. And they did everything together. And after drill, they had the bar in there. Well, you don't do that anymore. You get transferred all over the state to get promotion, or you cross-leveled for mobilization. We've lost a lot of that cohesion that existed between training periods. So it makes it that much more difficult to stay plugged into your people and what they're experiencing.
So you think there's anything that the Guard needs to do to, that's all the stuff after, but has it changed in the Guard where they're trying to be more proactive up front and we're not doing all this stuff before?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many. We have a whole directorate now that's for resiliency, just trying to find those ways to keep connecting with the soldiers to make sure that soldiers and airmen, to make sure that they, one, can be identified and we are able to provide resources to them to help them in their time of crisis and need, or their family in their time of crisis and need. But just the time gap is hard. I think one of the things that we need to continue working on is carving out that formal time when you're all together to do things that build that cohesion. And too often we get focused on train. We only have this much time together. We have to do this, and this, and table 5 and blah, 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 blah. At some point, you're just gonna have to take a breath and be people together so you can understand the baseline of how they feel, how they act, the challenges that they may or may not be facing, and if they need help, or at least to establish that trust that they feel confident enough to call you. And you still build cohesion when you're go. Don't get me wrong. We killed that. We did a great job. But you're not sitting around bullshitting over a couple beers and really getting to know somebody and hear about the challenges they're having because they split with their wife or their husband and the kids are over here and I was supposed to be my weekend, but I'm at range fire.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta really know a person to start feeling them at that level. And we don't afford them the time to do that. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to sacrifice some of that hoo-wah for some people time.
Yeah, and I think it's, that's a great look at it, and it happens everywhere though. I mean, that's how the world is in every aspect. Not to make the military or the Guards wrong, but it's something that definitely needs to be changed and everything. We need to be more in tune of how people are really doing and communicate and listen to people, and the big thing is just changing the mindset, the stigma.
Yeah. I'm confident they're going to get there though. I mean, you don't hear the suck it up like you used to. I mean, we're trying. Yeah. They're trying.
Yeah, but I think there's also in any organization, the military is still that organization. I still hear it from people that are in is, there is still reluctancy to say that I'm not doing okay because I can affect promotions, I can affect jobs,
security clearances.
The same time with in the civilian world, when you're talking about not doing well, that can have effects on a lot of things. That's what really has to change too. Really look at it and be like, hey, listen. You're kidding yourself if you haven't been struggling and had a really bad year or bad week or whatever. Mm-hmm. But everyone struggles, and it doesn't mean you're defective or you can't do things. It just means you need help.
Yep.
And you got to find the right place to get help. And yeah, it does really start from, like I said before, that person being able to recognize that you're not doing well, mm-hmm. and having the courage to. So I'm not doing well.
Yeah, raise your hand.
Yeah,
I'm not doing well.
Yeah, because we don't do that in anything. You know what I mean?
What's that?
We don't do that in anything. We don't do that. Like how often you sit around going like, "Hey, Mike, I really need help losing 20 pounds. Will you help me?" We don't do that. Let alone, hey, I'm struggling, mentally, and I'm, thinking about not being around. I mean, that's just even more uncomfortable conversation.
That's a good point. They'll go to the gym with you and help you bulk up. But if you start talking about deep stuff and life crisis, I think I got duty tonight. I got to go or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's just a mentality change. I mean, it's a society thing change too. I think it's different. I think it's and I kind of struggle with, why we did this and, think about, mask or how we're looked at as people in the military, former military people or law enforcement, first responders. You're supposed to be tough. You're not supposed to be bothered by anything. And you get in this image of like, if I look scared or I'm sad or whatever, then what's this person? It doesn't matter what that person thinks. It matters how I'm feeling about myself. So important thing. It's good to hear that the Guard is moving that, because it's not and not to throw it on the Guard, but the Guard is not the only one having the problem. It's military wise. So
yeah, and my world is what my world is, and from what I see, there's definitely every attempt is being made to get better. It's just such a daunting problem, but they're not taking bites out of that elephant. I can tell you that.
Yeah. You ready for another pour?
Yeah.
There we go. We're going big boy now. We're going 15 years, 4 months, I think, on this one. Nothing. Don't ever say that nothing good came out of the state of Missouri. But this is really good. This is from the state of Missouri.
It's from the state of Kentucky.
What?
It's from the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, but they picked it in Missouri. Come on, give Missouri some credit. Come on. And this is what's old school. This is what's fun about the old one.
Oh yeah.
The wax goes everywhere. Look at that. Look at that. Throw a piece of. So you've never had one of these older Knob Creek picks?
Mm-mm.
Oh wow.
That's the oldest.
Nice. Here we go. We're going 15 years. I'm not going to hold this spiel, but this is 4 months. This is a private barrel from the state of Missouri.
Mm.
I think this is an old school one too. This is from 19.
Wow.
I'm gonna dig this out.
Thanks.
I had to find that. I only have a few bottles, so it was easy to find. Ooh.
Well, speaking of folks that are dealing with a challenge right now, we'll raise this one to.
You got to hand it to the scavengers. They're definitely going to want some of that. Just hand them that bottle real quick.
So we'll raise this one to the 134 and Lieutenant Ritter, Cleveland police officer who just lost his life.
Got to tell about Holla, brother. Yep.
As fine a pour as he was, soldier.
Yeah, that was hit pretty hard. And I don't know that everybody's actually a first lieutenant. He was right.
Yeah,
artillery officer. And
I did not know him personally.
Line of duty up in Cleveland last week. So
had gone on a deployment with the unit. They just got back a few months ago. Gets back into regular life and loses his life. Also serving in a different capacity. So
originally from New York. New York guy.
I think he was commissioned out of Syracuse.
Yeah. So.
But I did not know him personally. I was in that unit. I know a lot of the folks that are hurting due to his loss, and everything you read and hear about him is he's an amazing soldier and person, which is important. And we just keep him and his family in our hearts. Yeah,
and if you're struggling, it's like I said before, if one of these people this is hitting you hard, you have some personal touch in it. Like definitely reach out and talk to people. There's plenty of people out there, and I know there's a huge community that knows him. It's a tragic thing, and rest in peace.
Yep.
We just got Debbie Downer though, didn't we?
I know. We went from Outlook and teams.
We're getting deep, which I like. We're going to even get more Debbie Downer, which is great. So, one of the things in the guard, like people they may be picking up on it, but AGR means you have to go to where the jobs are. So had some, I think you're the first AGR officer who had to bounce around, maybe the second,
Tim,
but not as much. Yeah.
Tim Dubinsky's
not as much,
AGR.
but not bounce around as much as you did. But, it's a bouncing around. So like, do you ever, how hard is that to change that, that it's just an insignia, but how hard is it to change that mentality from when you're coming in? Did you find that to be enjoyable, or was it a little distracting? Do you wish you got to know more about one thing or
that? Yeah. I think, and it's all on me. Let me be clear. I definitely had the power to change that. But when you're a young dumbass captain, you're like, I'm going to go over here and be awesome. So definitely as a junior officer, it's easier to switch just because you haven't been as ingrained in your ways. I mentioned earlier, I was the signal officer in the artillery battalion. So that meant I got to hang around and do a lot of cool artillery things. So that jump wasn't hard, but I was barely that before I got hired AGR and had to go to ordnance school. So I think that's the hardest part is you become vaguely familiar with things, which you do already as an officer. But then if you had stayed focused in one career field, you would at least pick up some depth over time. I think bouncing around makes that more of a challenge. I stayed eventually in the logistics arena longer. So over time, I hope, if any of my old bosses are listening, I hope you agree. But I think I became more proficient at that craft as I gained that experience. But jumping so many times makes it difficult.
So what's that like though? Because you become like, by the time you're an lieutenant colonel, logistician, you've kind of done a lot of from the ground up logistics, and you're kind of the subject matter expert. Did you what's that like when you're bouncing around like that? Is it understood in the AGR culture, the guard culture, that you may not have like the subject matter experts? Does that make sense? Is that making sense?
It's understood, but it's not excused. They still, the expectation is you are a master of your craft.
Okay.
And I think the one advantage I did have is being on the other side for 10 years plus. I understood the impact a little better, maybe, of the logistician saying no, or I can't. You're not allowed to say that, first of all. You got to figure out a way to do it within reason. But I think it gave me a little more ability to understand why some of the requests that we may get came about. It enabled me to anticipate things that were going to come up a little more. So I think there were positives of it, but definitely moving around so much definitely limits your ability to gain a depth of experience over a significant amount of time.
It's like jack of all trades. That's a good part. That's a good part of it too, right? You have
Often
maybe
enough
not.
just to be dangerous. You know?
Well, that's the thing. Would you rather be an expert at one thing or a semi-expert of many things?
Well, there's just your warrants versus your officers, right?
True.
But yeah, I think that was probably the hardest part about it. Now, fortunately, as a National Guard AGR, you know, the borders of the state are our limits, where our brothers and sisters in the reserve AGR force, they're like, hey, congratulations, you're going from Fort McCoy to Alabama. Good job.
But they generally able to stay in their branch and career field a little bit better because there's more opportunities.
Because they move around. Yeah,
that's a good difference. Yeah, the reserves, just to say, the reserve officers that are AGR, they are able to take an assignment, an ordnance assignment in any state.
Right.
Yeah. So
and that contributes to your jumping.
Yeah.
So, for example, as a signal officer, I was a commo platoon leader.
Right.
There's one of those in every battalion. Oh, there was a battalion signal officer, one of those in every battalion. But there's only 4 brigades, and there's only one signal officer in each brigade. So the pyramid becomes like this. And for just survival, you have to look at another opportunity. It's very common for us to have multiple branches.
So I gave you the easy question first. What was the worst job you had in the military?
The worst job? Well, probably that deployment where I counted shitters and shower heads in Arif John was pretty crappy. But all of them taught you something at least. I think that was probably the worst one. The Brigade 4 job was probably the most stressful, and I had that for 4 years. So brought him home from Kosovo, was the 4, took him over to OIF, and then brought him back from that. So there's a lot of stress and friction in that I over time did not enjoy. But really just that deployment job where we had to go babysit for a year was probably the worst job I had.
So the biggest thing you've learned in your time of 20 years in the military?
Listen.
What's that?
Listen to your people. Don't be so caught up in what you think is supposed to happen. Figure out what the right thing is. Listen, develop your course of action based on the input that you get. When I first came to the Forward Support Battalion as the training officer, I came from the combat arms. So I'm going over here. We're going to whip this field or Forward Support Battalion to shape. We're going to weapons qual. We're going to do this. We're going to fire. We're going to do this. And Master Sergeant Reed, the ops NCO, was awesome. Older guy, crusty old dude. Love you, Joe. And he would say, boss, we can't do that. I'm like, shit, we're going to do that. It's like, boss, I'm telling you, we're not going to be able to do it. I said, God damn it, we're going to do it. He's like, okay. We fucked that up so bad. And I remember Monday at work, he looked at me and he's like, hey, you going to listen to me now? And I said, yes. So he taught me early on, listen, obviously have a goal and a vision, but listen, take the input, be realistic, set realistic standards.
What do you consider your biggest failure or disappointment?
I don't think there's one failure or disappointment. I think there are scenarios I can look back at over time and wish I had done something better. And most of those have to do with the way that I handled a personnel situation or did not handle a situation that needed to be addressed. So I think they're like little pebbles that filled up the glass over time. But like everything else, you learn from those and you think better. I will do this better next time by doing the following. And I think probably then also just not taking it upon myself to have greater depth of knowledge in the positions that I would have.
Just like you said, I've had this train of thought here for a little bit as you were talking. Because I feel like when you leave, like your company commander, you feel like you did it really well. And then like 2 years later, like 5 years later, you're like, I would slay that job if I was now. So isn't it interesting that how they –
when you know how to do
how
it,
the system works.
You know
like,
how to time.
Do
it's time
you
to
think
go.
you could go back when you were and be a better platoon leader when you had been in for 5 years? You think so? I don't know though.
Yeah, But that's how they move.
Because I
you.
feel like I have it as like, yes, you could, but I feel like it's the military has that where it's structured that way for a reason. Because you are like, you're dangerous enough to know what you know and what you don't know, and you're in that learning process, right? So that system is more like you're like, I go back to my platoon leader days, and like I feel like that was the greatest job ever, because you're around your people, you know what I mean? You're around them every day. You're like sleeping with them, eating with them, everything. You just do everything together. You know what I mean? You're a big family, but you're like learning along the way. Like if you went back like as like a 6 year, 6 years in the Army, go back, I just feel like it'd be like,
I think it'd be cake. The things that kept you up all night. Now you'll walk in and go,
yeah,
done.
but you have to get to where, I guess that's just a stupid scenario, because you have to go through what we went through to get to the 6 years, but it wouldn't be, I mean, because it was fun learning. It was, I feel like when a platoon leader, company commander, all the jobs you had was always fun learning. It was always fun being challenged. It was always fun,
doing something new.
It was always fun making a mistake. I mean, not always fun making a mistake, but I mean, you learn, if you're really looking out, you were learning. Everything was a learning experience. Like, listening to that Master Sergeant you talked about, like you can do that once or twice, but after the third time, they don't tell you. And then before you know it, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So interesting. So
I think that's why I was late to the party. I think company level command probably would have been the best, but I don't know that I was as confident in my skills or as focused in my vision as I was when I became a battalion commander, because though my time was taken up by a lot of things I didn't control in battalion command, I also had a lot more authority to steer that ship. And I could take that whole boat and say, we want to go here. And then by the way, and I'm going to go out and I'm doing water purification today. And I don't know, Sergeant Major, figure it out. And that, and the other part is I had great Sergeants Major that looked out for me and kept me out of trouble. They recognized what my screwy vision was and helped me put it into something that soldiers could actually do.
Vision.
I used to tell my XO, I was like, dude, I'm like the hood ornament. I'm out there pointing the way. You're the engine back here. You got to make this thing go.
See, I love being an XO.
Oh, I hated it.
Because I loved it. You could be like, you're like a ball of fire, man. You don't really have to be nice to anybody, because you could just flame everything up. You can get everybody moving. You're really doing so much more than you're doing all kinds of awesome shit. Like you can just, I mean, you're the closest person to the next level of officers. And I mean, I feel like I was around them a lot more than the company commander was. You're able to like mentor them or fuck with them or whatever you want to call it. But it's just like I don't know. I love that job. I mean, because then if you got, off the rails, you always had the company commander to be like, knock it the fuck knock it the fuck off. You know what I mean? This is, you're going to get me in trouble. When you start getting me in trouble, then I love being XO though. I thought that
company
was a
XO?
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that job.
Yeah. Battalion XO is no fun, but same thing. You could be a total rip-roaring rear end, but
I loved one of my favorite officers was a Tyrant XO, Major Darby, the Silver Fox. Man, he would fucking light your soul on fire. It was the best. I mean, it was great. I mean, he could talk to company commanders. He could make, I just think you have a lot of influence. It's a job you have a lot of influence, because as a commander, you do, but it's not the same. I feel like at the XO level, you have a lot of influence if you really want to use it. And I'm making a joke about being an asshole all the time, but you really have you have influence to do a lot of things. You know what I mean? Which is great. And you really are doing like so much work, really.
Yeah. And half the stuff while the commander's off being the hood ornament and like, I'm going to do water purification today. XO, you got the con, man. See you later.
Yeah. They come out and like, why'd you do this? Well, I told you about this 2 weeks ago, sir, and you didn't. Now you want to change this? Yeah. Well, guess what? We're not doing. No.
I wasn't interested then. Now I am. Harumph for rumph.
That's why I was so busy sitting in those meetings 2 weeks ago.
I think that's why captain, was my favorite rank though. Because you could be the king turd in the bowl as the company commander. Yeah. Or you could be some nameless, faceless staff captain that nobody gave a shit what you did. So you had all that range that you could do within that rank. And so if you felt like being who, you could go out there, I'm hard charging. Or you felt like being the coffee boy for a little while, you just go, yeah, I'm the assistant to the assistant of air ops in the brigade. So
I'm the one to make sure we have the right Calibra font right now.
See that template? Arial 24?
I made that.
That was me.
And you have to shade those pictures a little bit differently. That's how we do that here now. And we joke around, but there is a captain and major doing that somewhere in the military.
Hell
and
yeah.
a lieutenant colonel probably somewhere.
Just your level. We were at the Pentagon one time with a 1-star, and we were joking like, "Hey, sir, where's your parking pass?" He's like, "Parking pass? 1-stars make coffee at the Pentagon." Good point, sir.
So back to career. Last question about that line of questioning. What do you consider your biggest success?
Yeah, I think the progress that we made up at the BSB, the Mighty 237, the Workhorse Battalion, just as a group, we trained hard, we had fun, and we had people proud to be doing their jobs, and they were doing their jobs well, and we were volunteering to do things that the old unit would have said, "Oh, we're not really going to do that." We said, "Hell yeah, we're going to do it, and we're going to kill it doing it." And I feel like we always respected ourselves. But I think the rest of the brigade and other units looked like those guys are pretty awesome. And just to be part of that excellent team, an outstanding sergeant major, a super staff, a hard charging XO that kept me straight, you couldn't fall backwards into a better position. And we all bought in and we all made it happen. We did stuff like, it sounds boring, it really will, but the state was struggling when the RNC was in Cleveland. They were like, "Oh, we need a unit to do support operations up at Camp Ravenna." Well, that's kind of what we do. Instead of cobbling some made up unit together to do it, how about task an organization that's constructed to provide the kind of support you're talking about? And not only can we help you guys, but it also counts for our green tasks, because we're going to do it the Army way, but we're going to do it. And we all bought in and we all did things to make ourselves just a little bit better at every opportunity. And I felt proud to be part of that. And to have soldiers come up and talk to you afterwards and go, "Man, we had fun, didn't we?" I look back at that and think that was an amazing thing. If you want another team event, it was awesome. We were at Louisiana trying to get home, and they flew everybody home because they wanted to get the students back for school. Well, we had 400 and some pieces of equipment down there and no rides. And we stumbled across CDC down in Beaumont, not CDC, SDDC, the transportation folks down at Beaumont. And though all the naysayers said we couldn't do it, 10 of us got all of that equipment home in 3 days on a bunch of commercial trucks, just busting hump doing it. And we didn't really work together before that. We just came together and got it done. Another example where we didn't know what we were doing, but we were going to do it hard, and we got it done. And by the end, all 10 of us were in a couple minivan or full pack vans driving back to Ohio from the Southlands of Louisiana, just a stronger unit. And it was fun to be part of them.
So you had the privilege to wear 3 different uniforms, right? Like meaning little uniforms, BDUs, ACUs, and what's the new one now?
OCP.
ACP.
Yeah.
This is another crazy question. What's the favorite uniform? Which one's your favorite of those uniforms?
So I think the last one was the favorite because the material is a lot better. I mean, the BDUs were fine. They were so starched up though that they were crazy.
I like seeing you. Whenever I see people send me a picture of the BDUs, I like it because that's my whole. But I like the BDUs. You had to shine your boots. It was like come on.
That's true. Hey, you know what? I get it. I know why people are like, "Hey, we got to shine." I don't miss a single hour. I don't spend shining boots.
I wasn't shining. I mean, after you get out, it was like
you just feel.
I mean, how many people we took out of business outside the base?
I was going to say,
shining boots.
You feel for the poor kid that did the boot shining outside the PS.
Yeah, yet I've not met anyone that said the ACUs was a.
It was nifty for about a second when it was new, but
I've never understood that uniform.
And all the Velcro. Still a lot of Velcro on the OCP, but I think just the lighter material and everything just made it a lot more comfortable.
So you're going ACPs and then BDUs, then ACUs?
ACUs at the bottom.
You're going ACUs the least favorite.
Yeah. The worthless ones. Now that's how many PT uniforms we've been through.
This is never a good Army PT uniform.
The skin tight gray ones that people wore too long.
Telling them they need a liner in there? Like whoever's telling them that they need a liner inside those. Do they still have liners on them?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know who's telling them who's doing that. They definitely, because I've always looked at the PT gear as an interesting thing. All these companies, Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, they specialize in this. Why don't they just go to them and say, make them black and yellow? And you see, I'm saying the amount of money I mean.
Oh yeah, we've seen.
But there's something to be said about why you have a liner in a pair of PT shorts when you're doing sit-ups, though. I can see.
Yeah, but let me pick the liner. Don't let me get constrained by your notion of liner.
Okay, that's crazy. So I wanted to have some fun there before we get into more deep stuff. So, we talked off the camera a little bit, and you've had some issues there. So you've talked about, witnessing people struggling with PTS and depression. Have you yourself ever suffered from that through your career?
Yes, probably. I mean, so many others have dealt with such higher levels of combat, stress, whatever. I mean, so many others have had it much worse than I have. But I think if you sit down, when you finally talk to someone, it's very enlightening. I was just having a conversation with a mental health professional, and it wasn't even about me, or it wasn't a session, but we were having a conversation about how good it was to be retired. I'm like, hey, I don't have to worry about this. And, and I mentioned every day, you have your to-do list and you're driving to work, and for a fact you're not going to get that to-do list done, and you're just waiting for that fist to punch you in the face. And they're like, well, that's stress. That's PTSD almost. Every day you're girded for battle, and you don't know where it's going to come from, and there's never a downtime. You don't have to be shot at. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit. No, I mean, that's just work. I'm like, no, dude, think about it. In your brain, it's all the same thing. It's all chemicals, and it's all stuff not doing you well. So I think to that extent, I mean, there may be some of that, but I definitely made it out a lot better than a lot of my peers.
What do you attribute that to?
Luck. I mean, my assignments put me places that weren't as volatile, I guess. Maybe I had a stronger support network than some, but I don't think so. I think really it's luck. I could just have easily been me as opposed to someone else. So
when did you retire?
February 22.
So a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
So what was the hardest part about leaving the Army? Was it losing your identity, your job, your friend? You're still back in that. What's the hardest part since you've left?
Yeah, I don't think I lost my identity. I always felt that I was someone that wore the uniform, and I was absolutely proud to serve, but the uniform wasn't me. I have not looked at it. It's in a bag somewhere. In fact, the only thing I want is the boots so I can start riding a motorcycle. Or
to mow your lawn, they're great for the lawn.
Yeah. So, I think really it's just the people. And then I've sort of satisfied that because I work back there now, and I only have to talk to the ones I like really now. So, but just the people, the experience of a stressful situation or a strenuous training session where y'all can sit back and y'all stink, and the mosquitoes are on you, and the food sucked, and you're trying to go to sleep, and you're laying back to back, and like, dude, that was awesome, wasn't it? You're like, yep, that was pretty awesome. That part will always be something that you miss. But no, I don't think I really struggled to have a transition out. I mean, I was ready to go, and they were probably ready for me to go. I was kind of whiny at the end, if I'm being honest, especially with JRTC. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm leaving. Why am I going to JRTC?
One day in hurt, you're like, I'm out.
Yeah. I'm like, but yeah.
JRTC is not the greatest place.
No.
Great place though. Great training.
Yeah. Honestly though, it's amazing the resources the military can bring to bear to pull off a realistic and amazing training event with any resource
you
can
imagine.
imagine.
How much money they could charge if you just took somebody and put them through that experience? You know what I mean? Like train them up and to put them through like a JRTC or like JRTC NTC. Like it gets it's pretty stressful.
Yeah, a whole platoon of them.
They've got it down where that would be. Maybe have a platoon that you just are people that are paid in, they're taking the people up into space. You just you get a bunch of rich people.
We already do it with foreign partners. Let's just make a rich people platoon.
You'd be like, see that fighting position you just dug for 3 hours? We need to move it 4 feet over there.
Yeah. And you there pooping on the trail. We bury that. Don't put your toilet paper on it like a little flag.
Why are we
please.
moving it 4 foot over there? Because I told you to. Yeah. And then, by the way, as soon as you're done with that, we're leaving in 2 hours to go to a different place.
I remember we were occupying a new site, and just as we started, we got the perimeter set, and they flew over with the drone and a helicopter, and we're like, tack, 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 tack. And I just looked at him. I'm like, we're not fucking moving. I don't care. We're all dead, but we're not moving.
Forget this now. So it's good. I'm glad the transition is going well. We didn't even talk about the civilian stuff. Do we need to talk about civilian work?
I do want to mention that. So I'm a contractor. I work emergency management with for the Guard now, which is a whole different mindset. Where usually the Guard is the one responding when called by the governor to help in an emergency situation. This is all about protecting our people and assets, and it's definitely a mind switch. You got to turn your head around and think about it. How do we put programs and plans in place to protect our people, their families, so their brains are in the fight, and our assets so we can respond when the governor calls. So that's been a lot of fun. The other thing that I do is I started as a volunteer mentor for the Delaware County Mission Court, Veterans Court, which was a very rewarding experience. And I just recently, the gentleman that recruited me in has moved on to a position with Veteran Services, I think. Sorry, Nick. But he's moved on, and I took his position too as a volunteer coordinator with the court. And that's been an amazing experience as well. What I've learned is, these are folks that they're not bad people. They had a bad day, and now we're going to help them. We're going to help them get back and staying on the right path. And I feel weird saying that because they're not on the wrong path or wrong people. They just, because of their military service, in a lot of cases, they had a bad day, be it due to some dependency that was developed, alcohol or drugs, rage, mental health, whatever it is, they've had a bad day and it's put them in the courts. And a lot of courts, I think there's 22 around the state counties that have a veterans mission docket. These courts and these judges have taken the time to recognize this population and to try and do what they can to provide programs for these folks to get the help they need. And what I really like about our program is that even if you don't all the way succeed on the programs levels, and maybe you don't get to graduate, maybe you got to go the traditional route, they still care about them as people. And I like that. People deserve that respect. And so I've just started the paid part of the employment, but I've been a volunteer for a couple of years. And I just find that to be a very, a good way to stay in touch with people, a good way to help understand what people are dealing with, and then help them get back on where they need to be.
Well, thank you for doing that. Thanks for.
Oh, it's my honor to do it. It's a lot of fun.
So you're a big soccer guy.
Love it. Go Crew.
Second Crew, huge Crew fan. Season ticket holder or just?
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
all right. So if you it's a weird question. It's going to involve a TV show and movies. So what's better movie wise? Let's just say Field of Dreams, Rudy, or Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
You know what? I feel the same way, and I hate soccer, but
I think Field of Dreams would probably be next. Rudy was just so corny.
Oh, come on. Rudy was.
But everybody knows the best movie in America, though, is The Fifth Element. But that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
Multipass.
I haven't seen The Fifth Element in a long time.
Just flip through the channels any weekend, and you will find it. It's on there.
So Ted Lasso is great. It's like bringing soccer, but I couldn't put in all defense, so I couldn't think. I could put them Pele in there. I mean, what is it? The movie when with Sylvester Stallone.
Victory.
Oh,
Yeah,
Victory
he breaks his arm.
Is Victory better than Ted Lasso?
Totally different.
Ooh,
I mean,
don't know.
Victory as a movie and an experience, very strong. Lasso as a journey and lessons about people and their various struggles and how their arcs develop. I mean, you got 3 or 4 seasons to work with there.
That's true. I'm just not happy.
But Victory's strong. That's a good call.
I forgot those. I was trying to think of a soccer movie. And I knew one would come to me eventually, but
Yeah.
there's not many of them that are out there.
No.
Kicking and screaming.
That's true. That's true. Juicebox Boy.
Yeah.
I've met Juicebox Boy.
Name is Juicebox.
And there's Bend It Like Beckham. Never seen that movie.
Oh, that's an amazing movie
No,
too.
I've never seen that. Come on. Man.
Oh, come on. It's a hoot.
No way. No
Oh.
way. Can't do it.
Now I'll watch some trash. So, I mean, take my judgment with a grain of salt.
The Fifth Element, though, I haven't heard that one in a long
Oh,
time.
that's magic. That's the best movie ever.
So last thing about last serious question. You talked about a little bit. Maybe you can elaborate more with all the problems we're having, all the focus and attention on mental health. What do you think is not being done that needs to be done, either in the military or civilian world? What do you think needs to be done?
It's still not the assistance for mental health issues is still not resourced properly. Our solution for everything is incarceration or just put them back on the streets, and you're not getting people the help that they need. We constantly cut dollars that are available. And people will say, well, money doesn't solve everything. Well, if money doesn't solve anything, why are the best schools and the best facilities in the richest neighborhoods? Tell me that. And if it doesn't solve everything, it certainly helps. And there's a lot of waste that goes on that could be redirected towards getting appropriate free mental health care for people in our communities, helping them get the care they need, a place to sleep that's safe, help them get employment, self-actualize success. That's how you get people better, giving them the resources they need. But we lip service it. And by we, I don't mean the military, I mean the U.S. I don't know how we have a nation like we have and conduct ourselves with the healthcare system and support network that we have. Too bad for you. It's terrible.
Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, well, does collapse come first and then you have to rebuild it? I don't know how you fix that, but just the fact that we fail to resource important programs that make our people better and help our people, and just healthcare in general. I mean, it's just, I struggle with that all the time. There's so many things we could be doing to make quality of life of so many people better, but we choose, that's not the American way. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What? I don't even have boots, man.
Bootstraps now.
Yeah. No, I've got a few pair. If anybody needs a pair of boots, let me know. I got some I'm not using.
They're not polished anymore.
That's right. They're the sweet, comfy, fuzzy ones.
That's so weak.
Listen, nothing was
so
worse
weak.
than spending all your time getting that toe nice and shiny and then get in your car and dick it on the clutch.
Yeah,
You're
but,
like,
that's the best part. That was the part of mental. No, yeah, there's definitely a.
So when I was a kid, that would have
I
got.
still feel like in basic training, you should have to learn to shine boots, though.
Well, shine your low quarters then.
Do they? Are they wearing that anymore? The new uniform, you don't have to wear that.
No, that's right. They're brown now.
Yeah,
that's one uniform I didn't have to buy. Thank God. I went through.
I like that uniform.
I do too, but I'm not buying another one.
Yeah. You buy it just to wear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is it, the pink and tans? Is that what it is?
Pinks and greens.
Pinks and greens, yeah.
They should have done that when they made the AC or ASU.
That's a good uniform.
But
But it's
whatever.
not a dress uniform. Right? That replaced the B's, right? Or
Yeah. So we took like the dress blues, we turned them into a day-to-day fancier uniform
Yeah.
instead of going to the pinks and greens.
That's crazy. So last fun question. If you could publish any book, what would it be and why? What would it be about?
If I could publish
If
any
you
book,
publish a book, what's going to be about and why?
I think I would publish a book about a person or a community similar to the what the hell is the soccer team with Ryan Reynolds and them? Wrexham. Similar to like that, where, we go, somebody goes in, they got this down in their luck sports team, and these two yahoos or three or me, we buy it. And not only does the team get better, but the community gets better. And it's just a kick-ass place to be and have a good time. I mean, I think a lot of the reason I like the crew and my family likes the crew, when I worked at the Chamber of Commerce, that was when all that was spinning up. And we got to meet, and I spoke to Lamar Hunt, and we got to work with the team as they were crafting this thing and building that stadium. And it was just so much fun to watch everything coalesce and come together into this cool, exciting new thing. That's 26 years ago now, but something like that, especially in a small community, I think would be a lot of fun. And then just talk about, I think it should be not complete fiction. I think it should be almost a pseudo documentary. Like let's listen in on those conversations like they did with Wrexham. I know it sounds like I'm just trying to copy what they did, but I think that was the
they're
charm.
Going to shut you down. They're like, they're looking for you to make
Sorry,
a book.
this
We already
suddenly
did
went
that.
dark.
We're going to get a book about that.
But I think something like that, where some people go in and they like, hey, this is a really cool thing. Let's rally our forces around this and make it into something special.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you
for your service. Thanks for the great conversation. I didn't think we talked about email that much, but I love it.
I told you I'm a
Something
yapper.
different. Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's always different. And, most important, thanks for your service. 20 years serving our nation, serving the citizens of Ohio. Thank you very much for that.
It was an honor to do so. Got to work with some amazing people, and I think I'm better for it. I mean, as you go through your career, at least for me, obviously you want to look good in front of your boss, but I never wanted to fail my peers and the soldiers that I worked with, because that's who matters.
Right.
You get different bosses, but you grow up with these people and you want to do right by them. So I was lucky to have great groups everywhere I went.
100%. Well, thank you. I'm glad to finally talk to you more than just, serving you a drink and moving on. So, and we'll celebrate your dad here when we get off the air.
Cheers.
We don't have a military special anymore. We used to. So if we're trying, it's one of the greatest, cheapest bourbons or whiskeys. It was a bourbon, I think. Bourbon.
We had vodka.
It's Heaven Hill.
We had vodka and whiskey.
Stuff. Great stuff. So
it was the plastic bottles that were 30 years old that made me a little nervous.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, we're drinking. Maybe we can drink out of 30-year-old ceramic with lead in it later on tonight. We've been known to do that too, out of the old decanters. But again, I do want to thank you for coming on. It's awesome to meet you, Brett, and chat with you for the past couple of hours. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Learned a lot. I'm glad we feel the same way about the BCC. Shady BCC.
F the BCC.
Yeah. But and so tonight we're going to transition to the not so fun part of the night. It's going to be a little bit different tonight. So we're gonna honor a young man that we honored a year ago, and we'll continue to honor him around this time every year. We're going to honor I feel like he's a friend of mine, just all the stuff I've got to know him and knowing the ladies that put together the event for him. If you haven't seen our posts, here Saturday is going to be a big event for Spike the Sigma Mend the Mind, and this was created in Alex's name. So tonight we're going to honor our friend Alex Lawrence Wilhelm, 30 years old. Alex took his life on March 10th, 2021. Alex was born January 31st, 1991 in Dayton, Ohio. He graduated from Bellbrook High School, where he played on the Golden Eagles football team. Alex loved fishing, kayaking, hunting, hiking, mountain biking, and spending time on his family's houseboat at Norris Lake, Tennessee. He was an avid sports fan and thoroughly enjoyed the OSU Buckeyes. Alex loved to have fun with his high school, college, work, and volleyball friends. Alex took pleasure in his job and relished helping his patients and their families. In his honor, his friends and teammates established an annual volleyball tournament and fundraiser, Spike the Sigma Mend the Mind, to support suicide prevention and mental health education, especially amongst men. 100% of their proceeds raised from this event are donated to local nonprofit 501c3 organizations that are dedicated to preventing suicide, providing services to those who struggle with mental illness, and helping families and individuals who have been impacted by the loss of suicide. Alex is survived by his dad, Randy, Kathy, sister Sarah, husband Ray, brothers Kevin and Brad, grandmother Carolyn, nieces and nephews Emily, Will, Hannah, Luke, Leyland, and London, and his dog Gunner. And again, like we said earlier, if you were someone you know is in crisis and might be considering suicide, please contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255, or you can chat online at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. We'll do a quick shout out while we're here. There's still some slots open for the fundraiser here coming up on Saturday. They're doing sixes, a big tournament from noon to 9 p.m. It's a great event. Even if you can't play volleyball, I mean, because a lot of people are signed up who can't play volleyball, but if you can't play volleyball that day, definitely come out to the event. There's some great organizations that are out there. We're going to be out there with some great prizes, but it's a great opportunity to meet Alex's family. They're there. I'm super excited to see his dad and his brother. It's a shitty way to see them and get to know them, but it's a great event to see how much Alex is loved, and I wish Alex had been able to see that before he made this decision in 2021. So a little bit different than what we normally do. Like I said, it'll be every year. I know his dad is listening, and his family will continue to support Alex. Like I said, he's become a friend. I never met him, but I feel like I've known him for talking to you, his brother, Katie, Bridget, everyone. So get out there. It's a great event. We're going to have free beer. Did I say that? I didn't say that. Yeah, that's how you end it. Free beer. Anytime you donate to Ports with Patriots, you will get a free cup, solo cup, 12 ounces, probably more, of Zaftig beer. So come see us. Come see the other organizations out there. It's a great event. So
awesome.
I'll end it with I went with another logistics quote.
I love it.
I didn't know that I didn't know. I kind of predicted you would pick that the Hall of Fame would be logistics. So this one's from Admiral E.J. King, United States Navy. And he said, "I don't know what the fuck this logistics is that General Marshall is always talking about, but I want some.
But I want some. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, exclamation mark, but I envisioned he said fuck. So
Mhm.
again, Mike, thank you for coming on.
It was a
Thank you
pleasure.
for coming
Thank
in
you.
for episode 58. It's been great. It's been great to know you. Always welcome to come back.
Cool.
And we will see everyone in a couple weeks, and hopefully we see everybody here on Saturday at the event. So have a great night.
Cheers, everybody.